Deep within the demon castle, the royal guards were in a deep slumber, a permanent one. This is where our hero, Hanju, locked eyes with his target. A smirk played on his lips. After this kill, a king's ransom awaited him. But as he lunged for the killing blow, a system window flashed before his eyes. You are being disconnected from the server. Seizing the opening, the demon king Vortsburg struck and sliced the hero clean in two. Back in reality, at Han Jae-woo's apartment, a group of thugs were wrecking the place, ripping the internet cable from his VR pod. When Ju jolted awake, pure fury erupted. He snatched one by the collar, his voice a low growl. "Are you ready to die?" The man's cronies begged him to calm down. They claimed they were just trying to save him from his gaming addiction. You see, our main character once worked for this very crew. Back then, they called him the problem solver. And yes, he solved those kinds of problems. A genius in his school days with a talent for spending money. He was a legend. So, the thugs had a point. Ju still thrashed him. But the truth stung. He'd poured every last cent into a new VR capsule, completely addicted to the game. Savior of humanity. In this world, every battle felt real, and the open world stretched into infinity. It was more than just magic and swords. One could build a legacy, meet captivating characters, and discover the true potential of a VR pod. Here, even a common fighter could rise to become a king. That was the dream that pushed Ju to take a 1 billion won loan from these loan sharks. All for this, the dream machine. But now, they'd stormed his sanctuary and cost him the colossal reward that would have cleared his entire debt. Oh, they were going to regret this. One of the thugs finally spoke up. "Hey, we're the debt collectors here. We're the ones who are supposed to make the threats." Jae-woo simply stared him down, his eyes like ice. "Go ahead. I'd love to see you try." The main character promised he would pay them back, but a quick check of his bank account revealed a truth harsher than any monster. He was utterly broke. A thug suggested he could return to his old life, working for them as their personal problem solver. But Ju's gaze fell on his dream machine. He remembered his true mission. He refused. He told them to get lost. He would pay them back soon. But first, he had to finish what he started. He logged back in, spawning in the main city. Greeted by a penalty for his death. Death penalty temporarily suspended for 22 hours. Frustrated, Hanju wondered how he could earn money now. Just then, a voice called out, "You seem to be having some difficulties." A young girl approached him. The protagonist asked, "Who are you?" She introduced herself as Aquila, the game master of Savior of Humanity. Hanju scoffed. How could a little girl be the GM, but she calmly replied not to judge a book by its cover? Still skeptical, Hanju retorted that he couldn't just take her word for it. In response, Aquila simply snapped her fingers, and the entire world around them froze solid. The protagonist recognized it instantly a time-stopping spell, an ability of at least SS rank. But Aquila corrected him. It wasn't an ability. She had merely crashed the server for a moment. That, she said, should be proof enough. Changing the subject, Aquila mentioned an event for the game's 7th anniversary, asking Hanju if he'd care to listen. Instantly, a system notification appeared. A new game world had opened. Aquila's challenge was simple, be the first to clear it with a new character. Hanju protested that he wasn't done with his current character. But Aquila dangled the prize before him, 25 billion won. She added that she'd understand if he was too afraid of the challenge. Immediately, something inside him ignited. Han Jae-woo felt his gamer spirit roar to life. Aquila added that she knew of his quest for the game's true ending, a secret he might just find in this new world. She then materialized a mysterious object, claiming it held the clues to reach that fabled ending. Han Jae-woo was mesmerized by the sight. As a bonus for accepting now, Aquila said, she'd offer a little something extra. A new notification popped up. Aquila had just deposited 30 million won into his account. She explained that Han Jae-woo was her VIP, and this was merely a sponsorship. With that, the protagonist decided that even if he failed, this was already a win. After all, that amount would cover his interest for the month. He couldn't refuse. Only a fool would pass this up. Aquila smiled, saying she expected as much, and would send him to the new map immediately. With a gesture, she began rewriting the very code of the game around them. Inside this world, she wasn't just a programmer, she was a god. As the expansion installed, the scenery itself began to warp and dissolve. Moments later, they stood alone before a single, imposing door. Aquila explained that beyond that threshold lay the new world. The protagonist understood. He just had to walk through. Without wasting a second, he moved toward the door. But before he crossed, he looked back, reminding Aquila not to forget her promised reward. With that, he stepped forward towards the true ending. Just then, Aquila mentioned she forgot one tiny detail. She stated that if his character dies in this world, he dies in real life too. Sheer terror gripped Han Jae-woo. But it was too late. He had already stepped through the portal. The moment he materialized, he slammed face first into the unforgiving earth. A wave of genuine pain shocked him. This was supposed to be a game. Then, Aquila's words echoed in his mind. Her ominous warning. It wasn't a bluff. He came to a grim conclusion: clear this game, or die for real. A storm of rage brewed within him, all of it directed at Aquila for her deception. With a brand new character, Han Jae-woo's inventory was completely empty. Not a single item, not even a drop of water. He trudged endlessly through a barren forest, cursing Aquila's name with every step. A glance at his stats confirmed the worst. This character was pathetically weak, with barely any health points. Worse, after 12 grueling hours without water, he was on the verge of collapse. His grand ambition of conquering the game was already turning into a desperate struggle for survival. But just as despair began to set in, he heard it. The blessed sound of running water. Hope surged, and he bolted towards the source. By some miracle, he found a stream. He felt like a true survival expert, fresh out of a wilderness show. At this point, our main character was too exhausted to even feel anger. His only thought was quenching his unbearable thirst. But as he neared the water's edge, he froze. A woman was there, bathing in the stream. He was utterly captivated, speechless. His jaw hung open, making no attempt to hide his stunned admiration. He stared, mesmerized. But when he tried to move closer, a system window popped up, demanding payment for a DLC. A new wave of fury washed over Han Jae-woo. A VIP paying for a DLC unheard of. He thought his status granted him full access to everything. Suddenly, other women appeared, surrounding him. To see more, they explained, he would have to pay. Drooling, Hanju asked the only question that mattered: how much? The next thing he knew, he was their prisoner, hauled away. A witch snarled at him, calling him a pervert and warning him not to move an inch. She added that if he behaved, he might be allowed to keep his clothes. But Han Jae-woo's mind was stuck on one thing: the DLC. So, how much is it? He demanded again. Another captive, a man, stared at him in utter confusion. What are you even talking about? He asked. The man introduced himself as Rude, a monster hunter. Our hero, thinking fast, gave his name as Valorstead Valor, and asked how a hunter ended up in a place like this. Rude explained it was just a case of terrible luck. He was tracking prey and got too close to the witch's forest. He wondered if Valorstead had suffered the same fate. Our protagonist could only agree. The hunter felt sorry for him, noting how young he seemed. But Valorstead brushed it off with a confident smirk. Don't worry, he said. Escaping is my specialty. He even boasted that he had the perfect plan already forming. And then it hit him. Hanju was the one who wrote the strategy guide for these witches. It had taken him 3 whole days of research. He knew everything about the 5 witches of Havelgunda: Kaldura, Alda, Fugul, and Huju. They might be early game bosses, but their infamy was legendary, with a kill count in the thousands. But their greatest secret was their fatal flaw. They were a chaotic, disorganized mess. And Hanju knew this was the key to his escape. So, he turned to Lady Fugul with a sly grin. It's a surprise to see you're still breathing. I heard Lady Huju was planning to get rid of you. Just as he predicted, Fugul's face contorted with rage. She instantly turned on her sister witch. The protagonist's gamble paid off. He knew they despised each other. Stirring the pot further, Hanju added, Huju planned to kill you and take all your things. Fugul whirled around. Is that true? She demanded. Huju scoffed, telling her sister not to listen to a mere prisoner. But then she added that Fugul couldn't possibly spend all that new coin, and demanded her share, her greed shining through. Then Aldita, completely oblivious to the tension, piped up. Oh, that must be why Huju is making an acid bomb. Meanwhile, Gunda, the glutton, only cared about one thing. When are we going to eat? And Kaldura, the battle-hungry one, grinned. If there's a fight, count me in. In seconds, all-out chaos erupted. Our main character smirked. His plan had worked to perfection. He knew that while the witches were a team on paper, in reality, they were always at each other's throats. It was a secret weakness most players never discovered. But Hanju, armed with this insider knowledge, held a massive advantage. As the brawl escalated, he turned to Rude. This is our chance, he whispered. But first, a little payback. With a mighty tug, Hanju sent the bickering witches tumbling right into a giant cauldron. With that done, he pointed Rude towards the exit. Han Jae-woo hated to leave without finishing them off. After all, even brainless bosses drop a ton of experience points. But just as freedom was within his grasp, Fugul's snake shot out, coiling tightly around his leg. The witch shrieked that if she was going down, she was taking him with her. In that moment, Hanju remembered a fatal detail: his current character was incredibly weak, and he had no strength to break free. The trap springs, but Rudd moves like lightning to help him. With a flash of steel, he severs the serpent's head. Grateful for the save, our hero rises. But there's no time to rest. He immediately asks to borrow Rudd's bow. Rudd passes it over, skeptical.
You know how to use one of these, Hanji-woo simply smirks. I can manage.
Without another word, he fires. The arrow flies true, shattering a jar above the cauldron. A mysterious liquid rains down upon the unsuspecting witches. Hey! Juju gasps in horror. This is bad. That pot was filled with potent acid, mixed with the cauldron's brew. It would become a bomb. The witches can only watch in terror, paralyzed by fear. A split second later, their lair is engulfed in a cataclysmic explosion. But Hanji-woo and Rud escape just in the nick of time. Surveying the destruction, Rud asks, "Is that truly the end of them?"
A quick check of his system confirms it. They're gone. He thinks to himself, that was a close call, especially for someone at his pitifully low level. Rud breathes a sigh of relief, admitting he'd lost all hope. He turns to Hanji-woo, genuinely grateful for his help.
As a reward for saving his life, he offers our hero a truly special gift. Hanji-woo receives the red dragon fruit cuffs. His eyes widen in shock. He's never seen an item like this in any of his past lives. Rud explains he stole them from the witches, sensing their immense value. Without a moment's hesitation, Hanji consumes them all. Instantly, a system notification rings out. He has acquired the Dragonbone Constitution, a vessel of unimaginable power. Hanji watches in awe as his stats skyrocket into the stratosphere. No ordinary player could dream of such a boost, especially not at the very beginning. He smiles. Maybe his luck is finally turning around. Seeing this raw potential, Rud makes an unexpected offer, an invitation to become a hunter. And just like that, another system alert appears. Friendly relationship route with a monster hunter. Unlocked. Tempting as the offer was, our hero politely declines, explaining he has other plans. Rud simply remarks he must be a busy young man. But then, a thought strikes Hanji-woo. This could be a golden opportunity. His character currently has no class. All this massive experience he just gained would simply vanish if he didn't use it. So he changes his mind. He'll give being a hunter a shot. Will 3 months be enough time? He asks. Rud scoffs at the idea. No, the bare minimum is 3 years. After reaching an agreement, Rud leads him deep into the forest. Hide anywhere you like, the hunter declares. The protagonist has 30 minutes before the hunt begins. Hanji realizes Rud must have a tracking skill for hunting monsters, but he can't help but feel underestimated, as if he's just some common prey. After all, Hanji-woo knows this forest like the back of his hand. He's explored it countless times, remembering every secret spot. He knows its dense canopy can confuse anyone's senses, not to mention the poisonous spores from toxic mushrooms lurking everywhere. And on top of all that, countless ferocious beasts prowl these woods, creatures far deadlier than any witch. Our protagonist has faced most of them before, and with his newfound power, his physical stats are nearly maxed out. With all these advantages, he was certain he couldn't be found. But in a shockingly short time, Hanji realized he was dead wrong. It takes Rud almost no time to find him. You'll have to try harder than that, the hunter scolds. However, he adds, for your passion and effort, I'll give you 10 bonus points. Stunned, Hanji asks, how did you find me so fast? Rud grins. It's been a long time since I've met such an interesting student. From now on, give it your all. A system window pops up. Quest complete Hunter's hazing. New quest. Acquired Hunter's taunts. As Hanji spends more time under Rud's tutelage, he begins to learn a variety of powerful new skills. He realizes joining the hunter wasn't a bad call at all. 3 months fly by, and his growth is astronomical. Back at camp, Rud asks a pivotal question. Have you truly mastered everything I've taught you? Hanji-woo's reply is confident. If you don't believe me, you hide anywhere in this forest. Rud is taken aback, but intrigued by his apprentice's spirit. Fine, he says, but he adds a condition. If you can't find me within an hour, you're making dinner. Hanji agrees instantly, eager for the challenge. Sometime later, as Rud finds a hiding spot, he reflects that he's finally found an apprentice with true potential. Still, he muses, he shouldn't make it too difficult for the boy. The hunter figures hiding atop a cliff should be easy enough. But as he climbs, a hand suddenly grabs his leg, startling him. It's Hanji-woo. Rattled, Rud tries to vanish among the trees, but he's found in an instant. He tries spot after spot, yet is discovered every single time. Soon, the seasoned hunter begins to wonder, how could this kid master techniques that took me 5 years to learn? In only 3 months, desperate, Rud flees into a dark cave. This, he thinks, is his last resort. He'll never be found here. After all, this place is known as the Den of the Hellhound. But even here, our hero shattered his expectations. A true guardian of humanity. Tip number 1, he quipped not even an earthquake can stir a sleeping hellhound. With a confident grin, he asked his master, so, do I pass? Still reeling from the shock, Rud could only manage a single word, yes. Outside the cave, the old hunter confessed he'd never anticipated such impossible growth. Our hero played it humble,
crediting his incredible master. But Han Jae-woo knew the truth. His secret weapon was the system, a power he could never reveal.
He allowed the master to believe the glory was all his. Even so, Rudd praised his student's monstrous performance. He wasn't just talented, his memory was something else entirely. The old man admitted he'd never encountered anyone like him before. In his heart, he knew this boy was destined for greatness. With his training complete, a new path opened. Rudd asked if he was ready for the special task they had discussed. Han Jae-woo, however, had a more immediate goal. He needed to earn some gold before continuing his grand journey. Hearing this, Rudd offered a new opportunity. A close friend of his was a mercenary, and he was looking for new recruits. The proposal immediately sparked our hero's interest. This could be the perfect way to build his starting funds. Best of all, there was no fee. The schedule was flexible, and he might even encounter the game's guardians, with no reason to refuse. He accepted the offer. Rudd then presented him with a mercenary's insignia, a symbol that would grant him immediate passage into his friend's guild. The old hunter bid his student farewell, wishing him fortune on the perilous path that lay ahead.
Han Jae-woo reflected on his progress, defeating the witches and unlocking a class. It was a perfect start. At this rate, a happy ending felt like it was finally within his grasp.
But his true objective, his ultimate quest, was to uncover this world's hidden ending. He recalled the very reason he'd accepted Aquila's deal in the first place, her promise of clues leading to that final truth. Besides, Han Jae-woo believed the real thrill of the game was the constant, heart-pounding tension of not knowing when death would strike. He wanted to live in that razor's edge moment, and so he burned with the desire to find Aquila once more and claim the secrets to the game's true ending. Speaking of whom, Aquila watched from the heavens, an amused smile playing on her lips. She knew it now more than ever choosing Han Jae-woo as her VIP was a divinely perfect decision. Just then, another goddess appeared at her side, stating, "That Han Jae-woo? He is no ordinary mortal."
Aquila teased playfully. "Oh, has our dear Valera taken a liking to him?" But Valera's reply was cold. "I am a goddess."
She had no reason to view a human she was sworn to protect in such a way. Aquila simply shrugged, retorting that she thought he was cute. She then pointed out how incredibly serious Valera had become lately. She reminisced about a time when her friend was much more fun. Valera scoffed. "That was a lifetime ago." Changing the subject, she demanded, "Did you truly pay off his debt?" Aquila confirmed with a simple, "Yes." So Valera pressed on. "Then why does the boy himself not know? He still thinks he's fighting to clear that debt." Aquila's answer was chillingly simple. "It's more entertaining to watch him struggle with such vigor." "You are cruel, Aquila," Valera declared. She then demanded to know, "Is this boy part of some grand design, or is he merely your latest toy?" Aquila's eyes gleamed. "Let's just say Han Jae-woo is a promising investment, and I plan to watch over my investment very, very closely." Meanwhile, back on Earth, our hero's legs were screaming in protest. He collapsed to the ground, cursing the endless, exhausting forest. Every ounce of his energy was gone. He dreamed of sleeping for 12 straight hours, but he knew he had to push forward. The mercenary guild was just up ahead. Finally arriving in Frankfurt, he pushed open the doors to the Francois Tavern.
The tavern's waitresses greeted him with warm smiles. He mentioned he was looking for someone, and they quickly showed him to a table.
As Han Jae-woo settled in, he realized this place was a goldmine for information, a classic adventurer's hub, flowing with good food and even better ale. He knew that with full bellies and joyful hearts, tongues tend to loosen. It was the perfect place to learn about the mercenary guild. And besides, he couldn't help but notice that the waitresses were quite pretty. Taking advantage of the friendly service, he asked if they knew a man named Rebus Chaltz. The instant that name left his lips, the entire tavern went dead silent. One of the waitresses rushed over, her face pale with fear. "You can't say that name in here," she whispered. Another added, "The man you speak of, he is pure danger." She tearfully explained that her own boyfriend got mixed up with him, and he came back looking like a walking mummy. And he wasn't the only one to suffer such a horrific fate. A cold dread filled Han Jae-woo. What kind of mess had Rudd sent him into? The waitress begged him to run, to escape while he still could, warning him that the dangerous man could show up at any second. But in her frantic attempt to save him, she accidentally shoved him directly into the path of danger itself. A menacing figure loomed over him. Rebus Chaltz, spotting Rudd's insignia. A cruel smile spread across his face. "You must be the new blood I've heard about." He chuckled darkly, adding, "Your timing is perfect. I was just looking for a new pawn." Han Jae-woo's blood ran cold. This wasn't an opportunity, it was a trap. And he couldn't help but wonder, why would his master send him straight into the lion's den? After a quick exchange with a man named Reeves Schultz, the main character pieced it together. He was being dragged into the war between the Elector Prince and the forces of Pamut. But Hanju was far from naive. He saw the truth in an instant. They were smuggling him into a foreign army as a slave soldier. Yet, instead of escaping, He sensed a golden opportunity. The Elector Prince was a game guardian, one of the legendary electors of Paul's. This was his chance. Through the prince, he could gather vital intelligence on the other guardians. Just then, the sound of a war trumpet split the air. Perfect timing, Reeves Schultz declared with a grin. The prince has finally made his grand entrance.
As the cavalry thundered past, Reeves remarked that he'd be a natural fit among them. But our protagonist saw something entirely different.
Looking upon the Elector Prince, his first thought was that the man radiated the aura of a true villain. But the greatest shock came when Hanju saw the woman riding beside the prince. It was none other than Lady Valpurgis herself. The prince glanced at her, sensing her distraction, and asked if anything was amiss. The lady simply replied that there was nothing to worry about. With that, the procession continued toward the battlefield. In all his past lives, Valpurgis had been his steadfast battle companion. A bitter regret washed over him. He had never once managed to save her from her tragic fate. Every single time. The loop ended with her death. Noticing his grim expression, Reeves Schultz asked, "Something on your mind?" Hanju shook his head, but a silent vow echoed in his soul. "This time will be different. I'll risk everything to forge an ending where Valpurgis lives." Sometime later, they arrived at the training grounds. Watching the soldiers spar, our hero could tell the training was nothing short of brutal. Reeves explained that they were choosing new group leaders through trial by combat. Of course, a hefty prize purse was on the line. Pride and money, two powerful motivators. But the main character knew his real objective was to make contact with the Elector Prince. Lying low was his best strategy. Reeves, however, was determined to see him join the trials. "Rudd wouldn't have sent you if he didn't see your potential," he argued, cornering him. He then turned to his men, a sly grin on his face. "So, who wants a piece of the newcomer?" In an instant, several hands shot up, eager to challenge him. With no way out, he resigned himself to the fight. If he had to do this, he would not lose even if it meant revealing his true power. His first opponent stepped forward, introducing himself as Max. He sneered at the protagonist's slender frame, boasting that one solid hit would be more than enough. "Are both fighters ready?" Reeves called out. With a nod, the match began. Max charged forward recklessly, but with a single, fluid motion. Our hero sent his weapon flying. A wave of disbelief washed over the mercenaries. Hanju had ended the fight in one clean strike, leaving everyone utterly stunned. After all, Max was one of their strongest fighters. But to the main character's surprise, this display of power didn't deter the others. In fact, it had the opposite effect. It ignited their fighting spirit, making them even more eager for a match. This was the last thing Hanju wanted, but he was challenged by nearly every mercenary present, left with no choice. He defeated them one by one, using the grind to boost his attributes. Then, a massive man stepped up, introducing himself as Charlotte.
"Unlike those weaklings," he roared, "I won't be shamed by some rookie." He stomped toward the protagonist, mocking his size.
Hanju decided he'd had enough for now. But he was about to discover a horrifying truth. The option to log out of the game was gone. He knew instantly this had to be Aquila's trap. All he wanted was a few minutes of rest before he continued. But that escape route had been sealed. With nowhere left to run, he had to face the giant before him. Fine, he thought. If I have to do this, I'll do it right. Hanju then executed a perfect judo throw, slamming the hulking man onto his back, even after Charlotte was knocked out cold. Hanju noted to himself that the man was incredibly heavy. Witnessing Charlotte's instant defeat left even the mercenary leader speechless. The other mercenaries were now burning with curiosity about his true strength. To Hanju's dismay, they all wanted to test it for themselves. But then, Reeves ordered them all to back away from the newcomer. Hanju let out a sigh of relief, thinking he could finally get a moment of peace. But Reeves then raised his voice, declaring, "This man is the one we've been waiting for. I name him Valorstead Valor, our new group leader for the coming war." Following the guild leader's command, the mercenaries prepared for battle with their new, unwilling leader at the helm, marching toward a chaotic battlefield. Reeves roared the command to charge immediately. The mercenaries surged toward their enemies. On the other side, an army of grotesque trolls glared back.
Wasting no time, Hanju dove headfirst into the fray, his blade a blur of relentless attacks.
He was now officially fighting for the Elector Prince. Reeves had briefed them. Their enemy was the orc army of the Demon King Pism. Their mission was simple but deadly: steal the enemy commander's military flag. The strategy was to break through the enemy's front line, exploit the chaos, and collapse their entire defensive formation. But Reeves had given them a stark warning. Orcs are beings of immense pride and strength, possessing terrifyingly good coordination. Model, Reeves had given him a single, vital mission: lead the vanguard and shatter the enemy's advance. But on the blood-soaked battlefield, our main character found the whole situation absurd. He was supposed to lead mercenaries. His plan was simple: get some military credit, then disappear. Moments later, an orc scout stumbled toward his captain, his voice laced with terror. reporting that their spearmen were being utterly butchered. The captain refused to hear it, roaring that his spearmen were elite warriors. He snatched a spyglass to see the so-called disaster for himself. But as he scanned the chaos, his eyes locked onto the mercenary group led by our protagonist, and his blood ran cold. The captain bellowed his command. "Form firing lines, align muskets." A storm of lead and fire erupted, aimed directly at the humans. Hanju observed with a cold, calculating gaze. Muskets were an inefficient weapon. Their reload time was a fatal flaw, demanding constant rotation. The second the enemy line shifted to reload, our protagonist saw his chance. "Now!" he roared. "Charge!" His unit slammed into the orc lines like a tidal wave, trampling all who stood in their path. One orc stared in disbelief, unable to fathom how his soldiers were being annihilated by such a seemingly, but his duty was absolute. He had to halt the human tide, for in his hands, he held the sacred banner that carried his tribe's very soul. The flag bearer never stood a chance. In an instant, the battle was decided, and victory belonged to the mercenaries.
Our protagonist seized the enemy banner, a glorious trophy for his unit.
He just needed to survive a little longer, and the military merit he craved would be his. But suddenly, an ally sprinted toward him, his face a mask of fear. The main army wasn't advancing. They were in full retreat. Worse yet, a massive wave of orc reinforcements had just crested the hill.
A cold dread washed over the protagonist. Victory was right there. In his grasp, he couldn't understand why the others had fled.
One of his men cried out, "Captain, what do we do now?" They were completely surrounded, a tiny island in a sea of enemies.
From within the Orc Legion, a powerful voice boomed their hidden leader, the great General Callan, offering a command to the brave human warriors.
He declared that if they abandoned the flag and retreated now, he would honor their courage and spare their pathetic lives.
Our protagonist merely scoffed. "An orc's word is meaningless," he sneered. "But we'll put your banner to good use." Callan's fury exploded. "How dare you defile our sacred flag?"
Hanju's eyes glinted with cold fire. "There are no rules in war. For victory, my men and I are prepared to do anything." With those simple words, he had perfectly ignited the enemy's rage. The orcs instantly reformed their ranks. At Callan's signal, they unleashed hell. The humans were hopelessly pinned down under a brutal barrage. A system window appeared before his eyes. His intimidation attempt had failed. But Hanja Wu was baffled. It was a strategy that had worked every single time in the game. But this was reality. Under the crushing assault, his men's morale was beginning to shatter. They were facing a legend in the flesh. How could mere sellswords hope to survive an encounter with the infamous General Callan? Even our protagonist felt lost in the crushing despair. But then, a flash of memory from a life lived before ignited in his mind. He remembered the absolute truth of this world if he dies here. It's game over in real life. The shock of that terrifying reality overwhelmed him. Making everything worse, his men pleaded for a command, their voices filled with desperation. Without an order, they were all dead. Instead, our protagonist began to laugh, a chilling sound on the battlefield. His men thought he had finally gone mad. But then Hanju screamed, "Bring me Charlotte's trumpet!" His ally cried out that no reinforcements would come, no matter how loud he blew. Yet, our protagonist's eyes held an unshakable resolve. He knew exactly what he was doing, and with every ounce of strength in his body, he sounded the trumpet's call. An ally pointed out that he was blowing in the opposite direction of their retreating army. Hanju simply replied, "I know. Now keep blocking their shots." Internally, he prayed. If Aquila has any honor, she can't ignore this call. After all, he was a VIP customer. On the enemy side, the orc general ordered his spearmen to charge. A massive warrior broke from the ranks, rushing toward the humans. He aimed his spear straight for our protagonist's heart. But just before the final blow landed, the orc was struck down from afar. A new power had arrived. Riding a magnificent war unicorn, Valpurgis made her grand entrance. She had heard the trumpet's desperate call and came to reignite the flames of hope. The warrior woman's voice rang out. "Do not lower your swords. This battle is not yet lost." The orc general raised a hand, stopping his troops. He recognized his new foe. "This is the Countess of Nethern," he declared. "This has now become a duel between nobles." Valpurgis looked down from her mount, her voice dripping with disdain. "You are honest, General, but you are also unworthy." She immediately charged, and a legendary battle began. Our protagonist could only watch, utterly captivated by the display of overwhelming power. He knew that even at this early stage of the story, Valpurgis was already a monster of incredible strength. In the heart of the duel, the orc was struggling to survive. Valpurgis was giving him absolutely no room to breathe. She struck with ever-increasing force, yet the orc's durability was astonishing. "The Countess," he grunted, "is skilled in more than just swordsmanship. He even praised her hand-to-hand combat prowess. He guessed, "You must be Valerga's sister. That would explain your military discipline."
Valpurgis replied coldly. "I serve only God with all my heart," she added, "and I truly hate wasting time."
She lunges forward once again. The orc general roars with delight, his massive strikes aiming to crush her completely. But Valpurgis moves like a phantom. She weaves past his devastating blow and unleashes a blindingly fast counterstrike. The orc grins. A magnificent battle. With his final words, the hulking general collapses to the earth, defeated. Seeing their leader fall, the remaining orcs break formation and flee in terror. As they carry their fallen captain away, our main character can only stare in disbelief. A commander of that caliber, taken down in one clean hit. This must be the true might of Lady Valpurgis. Just then, she approaches him. "You are the mercenary captain, correct? I could feel your courage even from a distance." She then formally introduces herself. Our hero responds, "I am Valor Stead Valor. It is an honor." He admits that without her timely arrival, his men would have been completely annihilated. But inside his mind, a warning echoes. He's not in his old steel elector body anymore. He must tread carefully. Just then, his men approach with a prize. They present the fallen enemy's banner to Valor Stead Valor. A trophy reserved for the leader, the act instantly solidifies his authority among the mercenaries. Han Jae-woo replays the chaotic battle in his mind. It was a razor-thin escape. With a triumphant roar, he raises the banner high, declaring it his later, at Francois's tavern. A young girl enters, searching for Charlotte. He's immediately taken by her cute appearance. The girl spots his wounds. "Did you get hurt in another battle?" He asks one of the men, intrigued. "Is that Charlotte's daughter?" But a mercenary shakes his head. "No, that's Baptiste, Charlotte's 15-year-old younger sister." The girl glares at our hero, scolding him. "My brother was injured because of you. You need to pay for Charlotte's medical bills." But Charlotte quickly defends him, insisting their leader is the reason they're all still alive. The others agree, confirming he saved them from becoming orc fodder. Completely flustered by the praise, the main character tells everyone to just shut up and eat. At that exact moment, the tavern door opens. Lady Valpurgis herself walks in, and every eye in the room turns to her. Han Jae-woo is frozen in shock. The last person he ever expected to see there was the Countess herself. Later, she escorts him to the Harheim Advance Base. Valpurgis explains that the Steel Elector himself has summoned him. It seems His Majesty wishes to bestow a great military honor upon him. "This is unheard of," she tells him. "It's the highest honor a mercenary can receive." Han Jae-woo notices that Valpurgis is different from his memories. She seems even more thrilled about it than he is. The Countess gestures to the soldiers nearby. "These men are alive because of you," she says. "Without your courage, every last one of them would have perished. More than that, they are citizens of this empire. Their lives were saved by your hands. That is why I am so overjoyed." Her words trigger a forgotten memory, a time when Valpurgis protected him in a very different, desperate situation. He realizes she hasn't changed at all. Only their stations are different now. He is a mere mercenary, and she, a high noble. Valpurgis then leads him before His Majesty and formally introduces the hero of the battle. The Steel Elector's voice booms. "I am pleased to finally meet the famed Valor." He introduces himself simply as Philip. Han Jae-woo bows deeply, thinking that the aura of a true guardian is unbelievably overwhelming. Philip declares, "They now call you the Reaper of the Battlefield. Your courage is astonishing. Your bravery, that of a lion. Such a man must be rewarded." With that, he grants 100 florins to the mercenaries, and 300 florins directly to their captain. Han Jae-woo vows to one day repay this immense generosity. But then, he adds, "Your Majesty, I have but one request." He asks for permission to regroup his men and for them to rest in the city of Wittenbayr. Though the city is distant, Philip grants the request. He even provides a vacant barracks for the protagonist to use as he sees fit. Furthermore, he asks if there is anything else he desires. Han Jae-woo thinks to himself. Normally, he would humbly refuse. But this is an unprecedented opportunity. His eyes meet Valpurgis's, and an idea sparks. "I do have one personal question for your Majesty," he says. Philip permits him to speak freely. So, our hero asks the forbidden question. "What are your Majesty's true thoughts on this war?" A heavy silence descends upon the room. Philip pauses, considering the bold inquiry. Just as Han Jae-woo predicted, the court is in utter confusion. Who was this mere mercenary to ask such a thing? But Philip simply turns the question back on him. Han Jae-woo admits his perspective is limited. "But there is one thing that I cannot ignore." A nearby noble scoffs. "Does a single military honor give you the right to advise His Majesty on the war?" Another joins in, sneering. He's likely just repeating battlefield gossip, worrying about matters far beyond his station. But just as the judgment was passed, Valpurgis dared to speak in the main character's defense. She declared that one should never judge a book by its cover. urging His Majesty to hear the young mercenary out.
Philip's uncle called her audacious for speaking to his nephew so freely. But Philip silenced him, reminding him that Valpurgis was the niece of the Elector of Bayern, and demanded he show the Countess the respect she was due.
Just as our hero predicted, not even the legendary Elector of Steel could afford to ignore Valpurgis. Philip finally relented, giving the mercenary an audience. "And what is your vision for this war?" he demanded. Han Ji-woo stated it plainly an ambush was coming. Philip's eyes narrowed, questioning how a mere mercenary could make such a bold claim. Hanju laid out his logic. The Demon King Pismit's strategies have always relied on two things: ambushes and betrayals. From the 10-year war with the Toe Kingdom to the 6-year battle against Margaret Anat, in both conflicts, Philip's tactics had been the deciding factor. Based on this history, our protagonist insisted that one could never be too careful about betrayal. The weight of his words seemed to trouble Philip. "Are you suggesting," he asked, his voice low and dangerous, "that there is a traitor among us?"
Han Ji-woo clarified he was only considering the possibility, believing a little caution never hurt anyone. Philip had to agree, but added that the mercenary was far too bold for his own good.
With a flash of irritation, he retorted that the only reason the mercenary's head was still on his shoulders was because of his own mercy. He then ordered our hero to remember his place. Valparis tried to step in, to shield him from the Elector's wrath, but Hanju himself knew when to retreat. He bowed his head, apologizing for his error and asking for permission to withdraw. As he walked away, Han Ji-woo's mind raced. The Elector of Steel he knew from the past was far more prudent. This time, he was arrogant. But why? The only thing he knew for certain was that this timeline was already dangerously wrong.
First, the red dragon fruits had appeared far too early, a resource that should have come much later.
On top of that, Valparis, a key figure who should have arrived later, was already here. With a sinking feeling, our protagonist realized that everything he knew had changed. Lost in thought, he was broken from his trance by Valpurgis calling his name. She had run to catch up to him. You walk fast," she said, slightly out of breath. Han Ji-woo asked if she had followed him out of concern. She admitted she had, and apologized for Philip's harsh words. She then offered to help him with anything he needed. Faced with such overwhelming kindness from the beautiful Countess, Han Ji-woo felt a pang of embarrassment. His mind briefly wandered to her promise of anything, his imagination taking flight, before he crushed the impossible thought. Instead, he made a simple request, a quill and a pistol. Valpurgis seemed surprised. "Is that truly all you desire?" "I don't offer my aid to just anyone," she added. Han Ji-woo explained his dream was to become a knight, and he needed the items to learn horsemanship. Valpurgis was impressed, admitting she'd never met a man quite like him. Realizing they were in public, she decided this conversation was best had somewhere more private and led him away. Seeing Lady Valpurgis act with such open warmth made our hero's heart feel a little lighter. Sometime later, on the bloody fields of Harheim Peak, the Elector of Steel's army faced the demonic hordes of Pismit.
Philip roared at his enemy, "Today is the day you die." But Pismit merely scoffed at the challenge.
One of the Demon King's allies approached, confirming that all war preparations were complete. He cautiously added that using that woman might be a mistake. But the Demon Lord dismissed his concerns. His ally argued that the woman was simply too cruel. If they captured the Elector, he would be a priceless hostage. They couldn't entrust such a valuable asset to a complete lunatic. The Demon Lord claimed he was well aware of the risks and would take every precaution. And speaking of the devil, the woman herself appeared before her master. He praised her good work, but asked her to try and hold back this time. She replied that she always knew her limits. But the Demon Lord corrected her, saying that wasn't true at all. Still, she insisted she had never truly crossed the line. Yet, at this, a shiver went down the Demon Lord's spine. That much was terrifyingly true. He couldn't even begin to imagine what would have happened if she ever truly lost control. Meanwhile, back with our hero, he was training with his new horse. Its name was Philly, and it was unbelievably fast. A dueling horse fit for the noble lady of House Byron herself. She had even given him an incredibly rare potion, capable of completely regenerating whoever drank it. Suddenly, the thunderous sound of an explosion ripped through the air. Our protagonist's eyes widened. "They've already started. I have to hurry." He knew, in this desperate moment, that the chance of Philip's betrayal was no longer a possibility, it was a certainty. Because Philip had ignored his warning, he was about to learn a brutal lesson. His own uncle was a traitor, working in secret with the enemy. The uncle sneered, telling a shocked Philip that he simply didn't understand the grander picture. He accused his nephew of conspiring against the emperor, and claimed that to stop this treason, he had no choice but to join forces with the Demon King. And so, the truth was laid bare. The Steel Elector was the true traitor. With the story told, the old man looked to his nephew. "Do you understand now?" But Philip just scoffed, his voice dripping with disdain. "No one will ever believe such a pathetic lie." In an instant, the demon lord slammed Philip to the ground without mercy, hissing, "Do not be so rebellious. You're a lunatic for denying reality." With a flick of his wrist, he ordered his minions to seize the fallen noble. Terror filled Philip's eyes. "I am a noble," he shrieked. "None of you dare touch me."
As the dark servants closed in, a shadow blurred past them. It was Valparis, unleashing a devastating kick that sent the demon lord staggering back.
And she wasn't alone. "Escort his majesty to safety," she commanded her soldiers. Rage twisted the demon lord's face as he watched his prey escape. He turned to his deadliest servant, Hexax. "Go after him," he ordered. Her playtime was over. It was time for the real hunt to begin.
A cruel grin spread across Hexax's face. She turned to her undead hounds. "It's dinner time."
The famished beasts needed no other encouragement. Moments later, a tide of undead hounds surged forward, and our main character found himself directly in their path.
He wasn't surprised. He thought to himself, "Zombie dogs? Just as I expected."
He knew Hexax's strategy all too well: use the hounds to drain an enemy's strength, devouring them piece by agonizing piece. Hanji Wu despised this cowardly tactic, but since only a few hounds came for him, he knew the main pack was hunting Philip. He couldn't care less about that worthless noble's life. His only thought was for Valparis. To protect her, he charged forward without hesitation. Elsewhere, Valparis and Philip were desperately fleeing from the ravenous pack. Philip whined, complaining that his mana control felt off, naturally blaming anyone but himself for the predicament. This had to be the demon lord's doing. Mid-air, a hound lunged for Philip, but Valparis intercepted it with lightning speed, saving him just in time. Her blinding speed proved to be their greatest asset against the undead horde.
Worried for the noble's safety, she warned him, "Your Majesty, we are deep in demon territory. We must be extremely careful."
Suddenly, one of their own was struck down. He cried out for his lord's help. Yet, Philip did nothing. Valparis moved to intervene, but Philip stopped her cold. "Leave him," he ordered. "Just keep moving." Disgusted, Valparis shot back. "My life is no more valuable than his." She fiercely declared that a noble's duty is to protect his people, not abandon them to die. If only Philip had listened to valor, none of this would have happened. She blamed herself for being powerless to change his mind. But in that moment of despair, Valparis was ensnared. Hexax appeared with a smirk. "How very unpredictable," she purred. The Countess cried out, a desperate plea for Her Majesty's help. But seeing his most loyal knight captured, Philip chose to save himself. He abandoned Valparis without a second thought, as if she were nothing. Valparis gasped, the cold, hard truth crashing down on her. She had been utterly deceived. A man like Philip was unworthy of his title. Hexax toyed with her prey, savoring every moment of suffering. But then, the sharp crack of a gunshot echoed through the air. One of her hounds fell. In that split second of distraction, our hero struck a powerful blow sent Hexax flying. Valparis looked up and saw the mercenary, Valor, standing there to save her. She was completely stunned.
She never imagined he would come for her. With her last bit of strength, she called him a hero. Before collapsing, unconscious.
Gently, the protagonist carried Valparis to a safer place. But he knew this wasn't over. To get her out, he had to take down the demon's servant first. Hexax glared at the newcomer. He'd killed one of her precious hounds, and appeared so silently she hadn't even sensed him. This is no ordinary warrior, she realized. Hanji-Wu then spoke, his voice cold. "You haven't changed a bit." Hexax, puzzled, Hexax asked, "Have we met?" "I could never forget a face like yours," he replied. Hexax eyed his weapon. "Nice gun, good range, but you'd better be a good shot, or my whip will find you." Wasting no time, he fired, but the shot only grazed her cape. In a flash, her whip lashed out like a serpent. It coiled around his neck, choking him, leaving him completely immobilized. She yanked him close and delivered a vicious headbutt. The impact was brutal, sending him careening through the air. "We're just getting started," she cackled. But as her whip struck again, it hit nothing but air. He had already dodged. He tried to create distance for another shot, but she saw his plan. She furiously tried to stop him, but every strike of her whip missed its mark. She couldn't believe it. This was impossible. No one had ever dodged her attacks before. She was the master of the whip. She thought her strikes were unavoidable. Until today, Hanji raised his weapon, preparing to fire. Hexax swore she wouldn't give him the chance. But once again, her opponent did the unexpected. Forgetting the gun, he closed the distance in a flash, plunging his dagger deep. With a cold sneer, Hanji-Wu asked, "How do you like my dagger, Hexax?" Hexax reeled back. Her focus on the gun was a fatal mistake, and it had just cost her an eye. Desperate, she unfurled her dark, demonic wings. "I'd love to stay and play," she hissed through the pain. But I'll have to postpone our fun for another time. Hanju pressed his advantage, his words like daggers. Running away already? Are we afraid to lose? Hexax scoffed. I won't fall for such childish provocations. Close quarters combat isn't my specialty, and I know it. But our protagonist simply pointed out, I have a weapon for that, too.
I can attack from a distance. The demon's servant boasted that dodging mere bullets would be child's play.
But as she tried to focus, she realized something was terribly wrong. Her depth perception was completely shattered. She had, after all, lost an eye. When Hanju fired, the shot was true, striking her down. To kill a bat, he remarked coldly, a direct shot is the most efficient way.
A cruel smirk formed on his face as he watched her fall. Hexax, you're finally getting a taste of real suffering.
But now, what kind of loot will you drop when I finish you in a desperate move? Hexax tried to seduce him to avoid her fate, but she never accounted for the main character's heart of ice. Her cheap attempt at seduction fell completely flat. The protagonist acquired some high-tier items from his victory, but there was no time to celebrate. He had to act fast before it was too late. He grabbed a healing potion and raced to his friend's side. In her critical state, this was the only thing that could possibly save her. Our hero carefully analyzed the potion's description. The instructions were clear, it had to be applied directly to the affected area. But to do that, he would have to remove Valpurgis's armor. He tried to clear his mind, repeating that this was only to save her, nothing more. He focused completely, determined not to make a single mistake. At that moment, a vivid memory of his past surged forth. His father, taken by illness when he was young, and his mother, collapsing from crushing overwork. Because of this tragedy, Hanju was forced to live alone by the time he was 18. At 22, he took a job as a debt collector. Though he tried to act tough, he often found himself going easy on those who owed money. Then he met a client who made his living by playing video games. This man claimed that by clearing one major mission, he'd earn enough to wipe out his entire debt. Curious about this strange new world, Han Jae-woo asked for more details about the game. The young man spoke of an incredible universe the game offered, even mentioning the beautiful characters who were far better than any real-life women. He explained it was an RPG, but unlike any other, it boasted thousands of players worldwide and actually paid its top players for completing the most difficult missions. Han Jae-woo found it hard to believe you could actually earn real money just by playing a video game. So the guy invited him to try it for himself. Han Jae-woo initially refused, saying he was too busy. But then, as if by fate, a message arrived canceling his next appointment, leaving his schedule wide open. Soon after, he logged into the game for the very first time. Strapping into the virtual reality capsule, he was utterly blown away by the realism of the technology. The people on the street seemed so real, so alive, making him question if this was even a game at all. He noticed a nearby street vendor, finding the man's every expression incredibly lifelike. To test how real it was, he reached out and touched the NPC's face. The vendor immediately slapped his hand away, yelling that he only served paying customers. Instantly, a system window appeared before Hanju for the first time, alerting him that he possessed 10 florins. He figured he should probably move along. But then, a small boy appeared, staring at a bright red apple. His mother, however, had no money to her name. Hanju asked the vendor the price of the fruit. It was 1 florin. He bought the apple and gave it to the boy. The child's mother thanked him profusely, saying he didn't need to spend his money on her son. Through this simple interaction, the protagonist realized that 1 florin was equivalent to a full day's meal in this world. He said goodbye to the boy and his mother, a sight which triggered a painful memory from his own past. He remembered walking with his own mother, always gazing at the roasted chicken sold near their home. Bit by bit, Han Jae-woo became completely enchanted with this new world, and after that day, he never stopped playing. When real life became too harsh, the game was his therapy. He spent more and more of his time logged in, leaving reality far behind. There, he could unleash all the stress from his job upon the monsters he hunted. While his real life was just waking up and working, in the game, he discovered a new way to truly live. He spent the last 5 years of his life playing. Then one day, Hanju was approached in-game and met Duchess Valpurgis for the first time. She told him she had heard of his legendary skills and invited him to hunt wild boars. He mentioned he was actually looking for meat, so her timing was perfect. It took the protagonist mere moments to capture the massive beast. While Valpurgis admired his overwhelming power, he was shocked that she hadn't even lifted a finger to help. Valpurgis simply stated that he was so incredibly strong. Her help wasn't even needed, before inviting him to form a permanent duo. Han Ji-woo questioned her. Is this some kind of contract? Am I supposed to work for you all day? Valpurgis simply smiled and asked, Don't you trust me? The protagonist bluntly stated he didn't trust people in general, a response she found strangely amusing. And so, she decided to recommend him for knighthood within the Empire, given his immense potential. It didn't take long for that to become a reality. Even Valparaiso was stunned by how far he'd climbed so quickly. He had actually become the legendary Elector of Steel. But Han Ji-woo insisted he hadn't done it alone. If not for her, he never would have achieved such a legendary feat. Valparaiso countered that he was the one who saved all those people, bringing peace to the land. Through his deeds, he had earned the people's unwavering loyalty, and in doing so, he had earned her loyalty as well. Valparaiso had always held deep admiration for the Elector of Steel. Back in the present, her feelings for the protagonist remained unchanged, even though their reality was different now. She felt a powerful connection to him. She admitted that despite his youth, she had never witnessed such fierce dedication in anyone before. "What is it that motivates you?" she asked. He replied simply, "I love this world and everything in it," even with his face currently beaten to a pulp. Valparaiso seemed to understand, but she argued that he never should have removed her armor. He simply stated he had no choice if he wanted to save her. Changing the topic, she said they must hurry to the Valparaiso convent. The others had to know they were alive, and she made a solemn promise when they returned. She would repay his kindness. After all, he had saved her life. She owed him a debt far greater than mere words. Even through the pain, Han Ji-woo secretly thought to himself that he couldn't wait for that to happen. Innocently, Valparaiso mentioned that the entire convent would likely shower him with rewards. But he met her gaze and said her reward was the only one that interested him. Sometime later, they arrived at the Valparaiso convent, where Valparaiso introduced her guest to a nun named Angela. But the nun's response was ice cold, forbidding his presence and claiming the convent was in isolation. Therefore, the hero known as Valorstead could not enter. In a tavern not far from Rainfelden, Han Ji-woo was deep in thought, planning his next move. He intended to ask the Valparaiso convent for the angel's heart. It was an ancient artifact, a treasure passed down for hundreds of years.
Known as an S-rank holy item blessed by the goddess herself, it held the miraculous power to return a soul to its body.
Essentially, possessing this item meant having a second life. Han Ji-woo needed it desperately. It would be an invaluable asset on his perilous journey. Lost in his thoughts, he was startled when Valparaiso suddenly appeared in his room. She apologized for barging in, but was utterly baffled to find him hanging upside down. Han Ji-woo simply explained that it helped him think more clearly. Valparaiso's expression grew serious. She had a confidential matter to discuss. But first, she made the protagonist swear he would tell no one. Once satisfied that she could trust him, she began to reveal the truth. Valparaiso confessed that the High Abbess had already fallen into ruin. Han Ji-woo was confused, having just seen Angela, but his friend clarified that the true High Abbess was Margareta. She also believed a traitor was moving in the shadows, likely a plot orchestrated by the sinister Pasmute. But what truly shocked the protagonist was the revelation that Margareta might still be alive, a possibility he had never even considered. Margareta was a legendary figure in the defense of humanity, powerful enough to subdue a low-ranked demon king by herself. She was a true icon of strength. Furthermore, she was the one who had transformed the Valparaiso convent into a mighty military power. At this, the protagonist shot to his feet, declaring, "We have to save her!" Startled by his sudden outburst, Valparaiso asked him what was wrong. Han Ji-woo insisted they had to find the High Abbess, and Valparaiso, claiming to know the darkness better than anyone, agreed to accompany him. A short while later, in the convent's office, Angela listened to their plan. Valparaiso vouched for the protagonist with all her heart, urging Angela to trust him just this once. However, Angela's expression made it clear she didn't like the idea at all. Han Ji-woo instantly deduced that Valparaiso must have told the abbess everything, which explained her extreme caution. Suddenly, Angela strode towards them, startling them both with her intensity. She declared there was a traitor among them, making it absolute folly to trust an outsider. Her voice dripping with contempt, she asserted that this stranger was not worthy to be there and ordered Valparaiso to escort him out immediately. Han Ji-woo defended himself, stating his only concern was for the High Abbess. But Angela coldly told him it was a sacred matter he should not interfere with. Undeterred, Han Ji-woo revealed his trump card. He had already read the Gospel of the Seven Demons. Angela was stunned into silence. She couldn't comprehend how that was possible, for it was a holy book written by Saint Anthony himself. The protagonist explained that the book contained everything about the seven great demons sealed away from this world, including death, one of the most violent forces of darkness. Angela warned that the simple act of speaking their names aloud increased the probability of terrible things coming to pass, making the subject itself a dangerous taboo. Still, Hanju pressed on, his voice filled with certainty. He knew how to banish the darkness. With no other cards to play, Angela finally relented. But her trust came with a heavy price. He had to swear absolute secrecy. If he ever breathed a word of this, she promised him a fate worse than death itself. With the terms set, the main character was led to a hidden chamber. An overwhelming stench of corruption assaulted his nostrils. He'd smelled this miasma before, but here, it was a suffocating poison. Our protagonist had never seen the High Abbess,
Margarita. But legends of her monstrous strength were known to all.
Sensing his unease, Valparis offered a quiet word of reassurance.
Hanju then asked if his friend planned to build a physique as powerful as the other nuns. She confessed she did, but her uncle's disapproval held her back.
As they reached the chamber, Angela's voice turned grim. The demonic aura inside was so potent, it could shatter a person's mind. She ordered the others to stay back. The moment the door creaked open, a wave of overwhelming evil washed over him.
Valpurgis noted that the goddess's blessing protected her, but her gaze fell on the protagonist with concern. Hanju simply assured her he was fine.
After all, his system had granted him protection. He could handle this. Angela then announced they had arrived in the High Abbess's chamber, but the sight that greeted him left our protagonist utterly speechless. He had never imagined Margarita would look so frail. He couldn't comprehend how this delicate figure could possibly wield the tons of weight spoken of in legends. Angela's sharp voice cut through his shock, telling him to get serious. She confessed they had exhausted every option for Margarita, forcing them to rely on a mercenary. Despite her hatred for it, Hanju was their final hope. She swore they would pay any price he named, if he could just save their High Abbess. Hanju agreed to help, then delivered his grim diagnosis. Margarita's condition was critical. Because she was a saint, the darkness was devouring her at twice the normal rate. The blackened veins crawling up her neck were undeniable proof. But, he declared, there is still a way. Desperate, Angela demanded to know how. He told her to brace herself. After a tense moment, he revealed the method was deceptively simple. All they had to do was use the convent's divine relic on Margarita. Angela's eyes widened in disbelief. You mean the angel's heart? She knew what the relic was for. It transferred a dark curse from one host to another. But since divine power and demonic curses are polar opposites, the transfer would be an instant death sentence for any cleric. That's why the angel's heart was needed. The protagonist confirmed her fears. The curse was lethal to all clerics. No one from the convent could ever perform this ritual. That's precisely why he was here. But Angela immediately refused. The abbess herself declared this darkness was her burden to bear alone. But Hanju made his own declaration. He would become the curse's new vessel. Angela argued against it. This was an unknown darkness with incomprehensible power. She was certain no mortal could possibly survive it. And even if he did, he would be bound to that evil for the rest of his life. Valperius agreed, pleading with him. There was no reason for him to throw his life away for their sake. Hanju acknowledged their concern, but his mind was made up. He had read the Gospel of the Seven Demons. He understood this darkness. Since he wasn't a cleric, the curse wouldn't be instantly fatal. Besides, he was just an outsider. Their priority had to be the High Abbess. His words finally broke through her defenses. Angela knew she would face Margarita's wrath for this. But she agreed. With a heavy heart, she presented the divine relic to the protagonist. As he took the artifact, he knew this was the perfect opportunity to make the High Abbess a powerful ally. Valperius made one last attempt to change his mind, but Angela simply told her to trust in his resolve. His decision made, our protagonist began the ritual. He placed his hand upon Margarita, chanting the words of power. Almost instantly, he felt the curse begin to take root. But he wasn't the only one. Even from a distance, both Angela and Valperius felt a malevolent presence poison the very air around them. In the next instant, the protagonist's world vanished. He found himself in an endless, dark void, where a booming voice manifested, asking, "Who dares disturb my slumber?" The protagonist introduced himself as Valorstead Valor and declared he was here to set Margarita free. The voice let out a mocking laugh. A mere mortal. It sneered that he must be insane to challenge a being of such immense power. Vanish from my sight? The entity commands, but to its shock, the hero's soul. It refuses to be extracted. An impossible feat. Hanju's voice cuts through the darkness. Release Margarita. Take me instead. Use my body as your new vessel. The being scoffs at his defiance. A mere human dares to command me. I am a consumer of souls, not a merchant. I do not bargain. Hanju realized this creature wouldn't play fair. Very well. Two can play at that game. With a smirk, he reveals his trump card. I've read the Gospel of the Seven Demons. He even bartered his dog to the Death Smasher for it, who's probably selling cheap copies as we speak. He leans in, his threat hanging in the air. Keep wasting my time, and every one of your secrets will be exposed. The bluff lands perfectly. The entity is shaken. It agrees to the exchange. On one condition, instantly, a quest window materializes before his eyes. The mission slay. All demon kings loyal to destructive death. Hanju's blood runs cold. This was a suicide mission. He has to think fast, attempting to renegotiate. I'm nowhere near strong enough for a task like that. But the shadow has no interest in bargaining. Instead, it offers a sliver of its own dark power. A gift to ensure the job gets done. Terror grips Hanju as the malevolent energy surges toward him. "This wasn't our deal," he screams. The entity's chilling reply echoes. "Nothing in this world is free. To wield my power, you must pay the ultimate price." Agony rips through every fiber of his being. He feels his power skyrocket, just as his life fades to black. But then, he gasps for air, his eyes flying open. He's back in the convent, alive. He remembers the artifact he used, his lifeline. It had granted him a second chance. A triumphant laugh escapes his lips. With these new abilities, he would become the king of necromancy, commanding a legion of the undead. He was the only player in the world with this power. It was only a matter of time before he claimed the #1 rank on the leaderboards. Finally, he would get the recognition he truly deserved. But his celebration is cut short as Valpurgis enters the room. Tears stream down her face. She'd heard his voice and couldn't believe he was finally awake. Valpurgis explains that he collapsed right after the ritual. She carried him here to her own room to recover. Now that he was safe, she begged him. "Don't you ever do something so reckless again? I was worried to death." He gently takes her hand, his heart aching. "I'm sorry I made you worry," he whispers. "I promise, it won't happen again." She accepts his apology, relief washing over her. But a sudden commotion from outside shatters the peace. Hanju rushes in, his eyes wide. "What's happening out there?" Angela sees he's finally awake, but her expression is grim. "It's not just you," she warns. "Someone else has awakened, too." A booming voice echoes from the courtyard. It's Margareta, declaring she's been asleep for far too long. And now, it was time for a little exercise. She beams, thrilled to finally meet the hero who rescued her. She introduces herself with a flourish. "I am Margareta, the High Abbess of Valpurga Convent. But you can call me Mari." After the formal greetings, they descend into a hidden basement. Hanju's mind was racing. Philip had to be long gone by now. He had planned to assassinate him after reaching the highest necromancer class. Cold blood. But without the angel's heart, facing a guardian like Philip, the chances of success were dangerously low. He knew he couldn't let his guard down. Not until the very end. Margareta was practically vibrating with excitement for a new adventure. Her energy earned her a sharp look from Angela. "Please try to act with some decency." The High Abbess just fired back that old age was making her grumpy. Even Hanju found her explosive personality a bit strange. But Valpurgis just sighed, assuring him with a small smile. "Don't worry, she has always been like this." Hanju found it hard to believe this girl was the convent's youngest and strongest warrior. He expected someone a bit more dignified. Margareta noticed their hushed conversation. "You two seem awfully close," she teased. Then she pointed to a huge door. Behind there is Valpurga's underground armory, filled with her eyes glinted with excitement. And many of these aren't just tools of war, they're magical. A skilled mercenary like you could put them to excellent use. Hanju thanked her for the incredible offer. Margareta's reply was instant. "You can repay me by taking me on a date." Angela's face turned beet red at the suggestion, but Margareta just shrugged. "What's the big deal?" "Anyway," she said, unlocking the vault. "With the right gear?" Hanju thought with grim satisfaction. Philip won't stand a chance. A short time later, he headed for the stables. Now fully equipped, the thirst for revenge against Philip was all-consuming. But just as he prepared to leave, Valpurgis appeared. Her voice was soft and laced with sadness. "Were you really leaving without a goodbye?" She asked him to join her for one last ride. As they rode, Valpurgis spoke from the heart. "I know we only met recently, but for some reason, it feels like I've known you for an eternity." She recalled their shared battles, fighting side by side against the Orc Horde, how he had saved her from Hexax's deadly ambush, and of course, the rescue of the High Abbess. For everything he had done, her heart was simply overflowing with gratitude. After a moment's hesitation, she asked, "Is there anything you are curious about?" Hanji-woo, playing dumb, simply replied, "What do you mean?" Valpurgis let out a small scoff. "Don't play coy. I know you're wondering what lies beneath this helmet." Hanju admitted it was true. Since she was never without her helmet, he assumed there was a profound reason for it, and thought it best not to ask. Valpurgis then revealed the truth. Beneath her helm was a massive scar, the mark of a powerful curse. Even she didn't know the nature of the curse, only that her uncle had spent his life warning her that no one should ever see it, forcing her to hide the mark away. Even so, she sighed with a hint of sorrow. "Some people call me the Ugly Knight, without ever knowing the story behind my helmet." Then she made a declaration. Though she had never shown her face to another soul, she would make an exception, just for him. Valpurgis was visibly nervous. This was a moment of absolute vulnerability for her. However, as she finally removed the steel helm, Hanji-woo saw her true face for the very first time. "So, what do you think of my appearance?" Valpurgis asked, a rare shyness in her voice. "Say something." Han Ji-woo was completely stunned into silence. He quickly apologized. Then the words finally rushed out. "You are absolutely beautiful." He remembered how even the Countess had refused to show her face, which made this moment all the more shocking. Valparaiso then said she had something she wanted to give him. She presented the Byron family's greatest treasure, an heirloom passed down from her uncle. "Why give me something so valuable?" Han Ji-woo asked. Valparaiso explained. "This is a token. As long as you possess this item, I will always be with you." Han Ji-woo was deeply moved by the gift, realizing she wanted to leave him with a promise. "I will take good care of this treasure," he vowed. "That's a promise," she replied with a warm smile. With that, Han Ji-woo said his goodbyes, explaining it was time for him to leave. He offered, "You can go first if you'd like," but Valparaiso returned the courtesy, telling him to go on ahead. They shared a moment of playful insistence before finally bidding each other a heartfelt farewell. Sometime later, Hanju reflected on their emotional parting. He mused that a romantic path with Valpurgis wouldn't be a bad fate. But his thoughts were violently interrupted. He was assaulted by a horrible stench, and realized he stood before the corpses of several fallen warriors. Judging by the scene of carnage, he deduced that Philip and Zimut had fought a desperate battle right here. He knew he was on the right path. He cast a spell, performing a complete scan of the area, and ended up discovering something incredibly interesting. With a surge of dark mana, he activated a necromancer ability, causing all the fallen warriors to rise and become his loyal servants. "Your first mission," Hanji-woo commanded, his voice filled with authority, "is to search these surroundings for any traces of Philip." He then pointed to a female servant. "And you," he said, "have a special task. Bring me all the scattered military uniforms you can find. They would be of great use, in a town not far from that battlefield." Philip was cowering with his few remaining men. He was still seething over his uncle's betrayal, his mind consumed by revenge. Without hesitation, he began to devour their food supply, even as his soldier reminded him it was for emergencies. The spoiled prince didn't care. His selfish instincts told him to think only of himself. Then, in the midst of his pathetic meal, a figure appeared, claiming they had been looking for him. Our main character introduced himself as the mercenary, Valorstead Valor. "Do you remember me, Prince?" he asked. Philip recognized him instantly. One of his soldiers urged caution, warning that their situation was far too dangerous to trust a stranger. Annoyed at being interrupted, the prince struck his own soldier. He claimed this mercenary had arrived to rescue him, that he had hired him personally. "Worms like you are not nearly as useful as Valorstead," Philip sneered with contempt. "And now that I have a war hero by my side, I don't need any of you anymore. You're all dismissed." Philip then ran toward our protagonist, practically begging to be rescued. Hanji-woo said he was relieved to have found him, claiming he'd searched the entire forest for His Majesty. Philip wept with joy, promising to reward the mercenary handsomely once they returned. But Hanji-woo simply replied, "That will not be necessary." In an instant, his undead servants swarmed and attacked Philip's soldiers. Philip couldn't understand what was happening. "I am not here for rewards," the protagonist declared, his voice chillingly cold. "I am here to settle a score with you, Prince." Philip was caught completely by surprise. He spat that a mere cub doesn't know how to fear a tiger, and that he'd been raising a worthless mongrel all this time. Our protagonist not only accepted the insult, but even mimicked a dog, openly mocking the pathetic prince to his face. Enraged, Philip drew his moonlight blade and attacked the undead. Hanji-woo had expected the prince wouldn't fall without a fight, but he knows that the more allies Philip summons, the more his mana drains away, and so he orders his undead legion to retreat. Philip scoffs, claiming the minions were mere trifles, but our hero counters that facing him is a completely different dimension of battle. He promises a special gift reserved just for the prince. In the next instant, steel screamed against steel as their duel erupted. The prince's eyes burned with the unholy fire of betrayal. Our main character, however, was facing a foe he had meticulously prepared for. Hanji-woo recognized it instantly, the electoral sword. A bitter irony, to face the very sword style he himself once wielded and revered. Its form was deceptively graceful, beautiful even, but hidden within its fluid motions was a deadly counter, always waiting to strike. This was a blade only the steel elector had the right to wield. Philip roared, "You dare stab me in the back and expect to live in peace?" Hanji-woo simply replied with a calm smile that he was actually on quite good terms with the nuns. The prince was stunned a mere mercenary had such connections, but he quickly sneered, having no fear of some militant holy women. With a battle cry, Philip lunged forward once more. Yet Hanji-woo parried the attack with insulting ease, stoking the prince's fury. Worse, every clash reminded Philip of the internal damage he'd suffered against the vampire demon. Han Jae-woo's voice cut through the air. "Your little tragedy ends now." And with that, the main character unleashed a devastating kick against his opponent. The blow was so powerful it sent the prince flying, spitting a mouthful of blood. Hanju declared that he was the one Philip should truly fear. The prince stammered, blaming his weakened body from the previous battle for his pathetic performance. He even tried to remind Hanju of his past kindness, how he'd once recognized and rewarded his talent. So why this betrayal now? Hanju retorted that the prince was more foolish than he could have ever imagined. But since Philip still didn't get it, he would spell it all out. First, he had ignored Hanju's dire warning about the traitor in his inner circle. Second, he callously threw Valpurgis away after her years of loyal service. And third, he selfishly let countless others die to save his own skin. For these sins, the main character declared that Philip was a disgrace to the title of Elector. Cornered and desperate, Philip played his final card, claiming everything was for the good of his people. "If I die, who will feed the citizens who remain?" he screamed. He warned that his death would be a golden opportunity for the other electors, who would descend like vultures the moment they sensed weakness. The main character admitted the prince had a point, and so he would grant him one final chance. If Philip accepted his terms, a life-saving healing potion would be his. Desperate, Philip cried out, "I'll accept any condition. Just let me live." With that, the protagonist gave his command. "Get on your knees and beg Valparis for forgiveness." The prince immediately agreed, even offering a donation of 10,000 florins to the House of Byron. The main character then produced the potion, ordering him to drink every last drop.
Philip took a small sip from the vial, then let the rest of it spill onto the dirt. With chilling sarcasm, Hanjiwoo asked, "Was the taste not to your liking?"
He then revealed the truth. That was never a healing potion. It was dragon's poison. Realizing the deception, Philip's face twisted into a mask of pure fury. The main character told him to thank Hexax, as he'd taken the poison directly from her personal stash. In one last, desperate act, Philip lunged to attack, but he was struck down before he could land a blow. And it wasn't the main character who hit him. It was a former ally. Philip recognized Piffenheim, his eyes wide with utter shock. The last time he saw her, she was being torn apart and devoured by zombie dogs. Piffenheim explained that after being left for dead, her new master saved her, granting her a second chance at life. Now, she proclaimed, no bond tied her to the prince. She had always hated his arrogance. And the time had come for Philip to pay for his sins. In the moments before Philip's death, the system issued a critical warning. The Iron Elector's absence could disrupt the game's entire scenario. Hanju couldn't fathom how such a despicable man could be so crucial to the world's fate. But he didn't hesitate. He could find another way forward later. With his decision made, he authorized Piffenheim to claim her revenge. Just as predicted, the system immediately began flashing a cascade of error alerts. Even knowing the path ahead would be infinitely harder, our main character felt not a single shred of regret. From high above, Aquila watched the events of the game unfold. She smiled, noting that the main character had indeed broken one of the world's seals. Seeing his expression, so confident and thrilled by his own power, delighted her. She wanted to see him shatter even more of the game's rules. After all, she mused, this was only the beginning. Hanji-woo reviewed his spoils. As expected from an elector, the rewards for defeating Philip were absolutely incredible. Better yet, he received 2 exclusive S-Class abilities as his level-up bonus. But when it came to the spoils of war, only a single object remained. It appeared to be nothing more than an ordinary magic amulet. Yet, the moment he tried to analyze its secrets, a powerful barrier repelled his senses. Realizing this, Hanju decided to seek out Margaretta's expertise to unlock its hidden power. Just then, his system flashed with a chilling notification. A transcendent being was nearby. He knew this hunt would require absolute caution. Hanju himself aimed to one day ascend to the level of a transcendent. To achieve this grand ambition, he had to conquer formidable foes, using them as stepping stones toward his ultimate goal. At that moment, Piffenheim materialized, bearing crucial intelligence for her master. She'd discovered an item left behind by Philip's men. This must be the mission's true reward, Hanju thought. The radiance it gives off is on a whole other level. He then inquired, and what of the other matter? Following his orders, Piffenheim had masterfully disguised Philip's fallen soldiers in the attire of the Pesmet faction, framing them as demons. Amidst the aftermath, one man was on his knees, begging for his life, willing to do anything to survive. Hanju didn't recognize him, until Piffenheim identified him as one of Philip's last surviving allies. "So, Master," she asked, "what is your command for this one?" Seeing the soldier weeping pathetically, Hanju declared, "I'll send a little gift to Pesmut. I do hope he enjoys it." Sometime later, Lawrence, a captain of the army fleet, strode through the very same area. His eyes fell upon a grim scene of fallen bodies. "These are Pesmut soldiers, sir," one of his men confirmed. They also reported finding a single survivor from Philip's unit. Lawrence immediately questioned the man, who claimed that the prince and a priceless item had been stolen. The survivor spun a tale of being ambushed by Pesmut's forces, forced to scatter, only to be cornered while trying to escape. But Lawrence's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Are you telling me you're the sole survivor of an attack that annihilated everyone else?"
Startled, the survivor stammered out a yes and desperately tried to justify his story.
However, Lawrence simply sighed, lamenting that he hadn't arrived in time to save Philip. He told the survivor he had risked everything to protect his superiors, upholding the sacred code of a knight. Then, Lawrence addressed his troops with a booming voice. This man, he declared, honored his commander until the very end. He faced overwhelming danger with an unbreakable knightly spirit. He is an example to us all now. We ride to find Prince Philip. Later, at the Palace of Roses, Lawrence presented himself. He reported his search for Philip had yielded only a few clues, but no trace of the prince himself. His superior correctly guessed the item was also missing. After all, Philip would never abandon something so critical. Lawrence immediately placed the blame on Pesmut. Roland simply commented, "That name is becoming quite tiresome." The captain offered his apologies, but Rose insisted that finding the item was their highest priority. She stressed that the item was their only hope of restoring Prince Philip's elector status. Roland declared, "Philip is not one to fall so easily." She then commanded her servant to deliver a message to Pesmut to return the item. Otherwise, she smirked, things are about to get very interesting. At Pesmut's stronghold, a message arrived. His face instantly drained of color. That madwoman had been resurrected. The woman he spoke of was none other than Margarita. She was a being that even a demon like Pesmut truly feared. He, after all, was the one who placed the curse that put her in a coma. His servant scoffed, saying she was just a human, but Pesmut furiously disagreed. Margarita invaded Off's lair alone, he snarled, and single-handedly defeated all of his subordinates with horrifying cruelty. And for what? Because one of them stepped on her snack. After that day, Margarita became known among the demons as the Destructive Storm. Another servant appeared, announcing, "A message has arrived from Queen Roland." Pesmut grumbled. What terrible timing. He already had more than enough to deal with. But as he had absolutely no idea what item she was even referring to. With that, Pesmut erupted in a torrent of fury. Now he had a certified lunatic hunting him down, demanding something he didn't possess and had never even heard of. Pesmut's servant tried to analyze why Roland would make such an assumption. They hadn't taken anything and had even lost Hexax in their pursuit of Philip. This is all highly suspicious, the servant concluded. Margarita's sudden return, the disappearance of this mysterious item. We see the end result of these events, but their origins remain shrouded in mystery. With that, the servant began to suspect a mastermind was pulling all the strings from the shadows. In a way, he was right. He just hadn't realized that Hanju was the puppet master behind it all. Speaking of which, Hanju suddenly sneezed. His ally asked, "Are you catching a cold?" "No," he replied, a strange feeling washing over him. "I just caught a peculiar scent on the wind." Piffenheim wondered aloud what her master intended for Philip's body, but Hanju's mind was already on a much grander prize. After all, the golden imperial document was now in his possession. With this seal and the prince's corpse, he knew he could achieve the impossible. He declared with absolute certainty, "The world is now in my hands." Piffenheim's eyes lit up, wishing her master an eternity of prosperity. Elsewhere, a group of companions traveled home. They joked about drinking the first tavern dry, ready for a night of revelry. But in a flash, an arrow whistled through the air, felling one of their own. Their joyful plans shattered in an instant. The other man could only watch in horror, completely helpless. Bandits swarmed from the forest, ambushing their carriage. But this merchant group refused to be easy prey. They would have vengeance for their fallen comrade, and so the clash of steel erupted. The bandit leader sneered, accusing the merchants of getting rich by supplying Roland. The merchant warned him, "You have no idea who you're dealing with." But the bandit leader just laughed, disarming him with ease. He taunted the cornered man, telling him to cry for Valpurgis, and to bring her powerful uncle along if he dared. Speaking of Valpurgis, she was sharing a quiet moment with our protagonist, Hanju. Noticing a smudge on his cheek, she leaned in close to wipe it away. Just then, Margareta burst through the door, desperately searching for him. Her sudden entrance made them both jump back. But Margareta was the most stunned of all. For the first time, she saw Lady Valpurgis without her helmet. After gulping down some water to calm her nerves, Margareta gasped that seeing Valpurgis's bare face nearly gave her a heart attack. She confessed that a face so beautiful made her own heart pound. The High Abbess then turned to Hanju with a deadly glare, warning him to treasure Valpurgis. If he dared to mess things up with a girl like her, she would personally tear him limb from limb. Changing the topic, Margareta demanded to know the details of Philip's demise. Hanju explained calmly that after the prince's defeat, he had left the body with his subordinates. But Margareta exploded, insisting Philip's death was a huge problem. She had wanted the satisfaction of finishing him herself. Feeling the heat of her rage, Hanju thought silently that Philip was lucky to have died before ever meeting this woman. To soothe the furious abbess, Hanju offered her a gift. He produced a heavy pouch of gold, explaining it was the prince's war chest. But now it was all hers. He added that with this much coin, she could feast on any delicacies she could ever imagine. Instantly, Margareta hailed Hanju as a living saint, declaring she was now utterly devoted to him. Meanwhile, Valpurgis noticed a stack of documents. Her curiosity piqued as she asked what they were. As she read, her eyes widened in shock. They were letters detailing Roland's plot to install Philip as the next emperor. Hanju explained the current emperor's bond with Roland had soured over financial disputes. Margareta added that harsh economic blockades were now in place. She revealed the emperor was seizing all goods from guilds tied to Roland, which was driving the nearby cavalry domains to the brink of rebellion. That, she explained, is why House Ritter attacked the Ignis Merchant Guild. Because of this crushing pressure, Margareta revealed Valpurgis was under immense mental strain. But the proud knight hadn't wanted Hanju to bear her burdens. But Hanju pressed on. What is happening? With a heavy sigh, his friend finally agreed to tell him everything. Sometime later, the true scale of the crisis dawned on Hanju. He never dreamed the emperor's economic blockade would ignite a full-blown war with the Elector of Byron. As he was lost in thought, Valparis came to see him. She begged him to forget everything he had learned. She couldn't bear the thought of dragging him into her family's war. But Hanju's gaze was firm. He couldn't just stand by and watch. He would help Valparis with anything she needed. Even so, she insisted this conflict was far too vast for him. She would rely on her other allies instead. She tried to reassure him, telling him not to worry. But Hanju knew that despite her strength, Valpurgis was still inexperienced, and her heart was far too kind. And so he tried to ease his friend's mind. He acknowledged that for a mere mercenary, the situation was overwhelming. But even so, he refused to remain a bystander. He would help her, no matter the cost. After all, he said with a slight smile, mercenaries have their own ways of being useful. His friend brightened. She appreciated his humor in such a dark time. Regardless, Hanju's expression turned serious as he declared he was feeling strangely confident. Valpurgis looked at him, puzzled by his cryptic words. The very next morning, Hanju was awake before the dawn. He marched directly to the convent, making a beeline for Margareta's personal chambers. He stormed right in, finding her in the middle of a meal, which caused Margareta to nearly choke on her food. Hanju declared he couldn't wait another second. He revealed that he'd taken a magical artifact from Philip. But there was one problem: he couldn't open it. To pique the High Abbess's curiosity, he laid down a challenge: open it now, and a reward would be hers. Margareta accepted without a moment's hesitation. Moments later, our hero noticed a pair of gloves, questioning their purpose. She revealed they were an advanced evolution of the magic zipper she had just unlocked. Now, with a simple flick of her palm, she could summon items at will. Stepping aside, Hanji Wu was stunned. He'd never seen an item like this, wondering if the game itself had been updated. This wasn't a bad thing. Quite the opposite. But his train of thought was shattered when he paused for a sip of water. Why the sudden stop? He asked his horse, completely bewildered. That's when it hit him. He had arrived in the city of Plusen, right in the middle of a massive festival, forcing his way through the roaring sea of people. Hanji Wu finally broke free, letting out a sigh of relief. It felt like he'd been trapped in that overwhelming chaos for 3 hours. Then, amidst the pandemonium, a single welcome sign caught his eye. This place. It was exactly as he remembered. He could see the people buzzing with anticipation, awaiting someone they called the Great One. Hanji Wu knew that Plusen was a melting pot of countless races, and the Great One they revered was none other than the Demon King. Kubalt. It was Kubalt who unified these cultures, using his boundless knowledge and legendary eloquence. After Roland, he was known as the most prominent pro-human Demon King, and he was a vital figure who could help with the current crisis. That's why Hanji was determined to find him, no matter the cost. Lost in thought, he was suddenly approached by an individual who declared he possessed the aura of a great adventurer. Even from a distance, the stranger proclaimed, "I can feel the power radiating from you." Intrigued, Hanji Wu decided to check his system to see what this goblin was sensing. And there it was, an SS rank title. Great Leader, which gave him a powerful influence even over complete strangers. Understanding now, Hanji stated his purpose clearly: "I've come to meet Kubalt." The goblin's eyes lit up with excitement. How thrilling to think the city would receive 2 powerful visitors on the same day. He added that he also had business with Kubalt and would gladly serve as a guide. Before long, they stood before Kubalt's castle. The goblin invited the protagonist to enjoy some tea in the reception area while he announced his arrival. Still, Hanji found it strange that a mere goblin could recognize his power level at a glance. But he decided to put that thought aside for now. In the center of the room stood a statue of the castle's owner, and a fleeting thought crossed his mind. Perhaps I'll have to hunt this one down soon. Moments later, the goblin returned. "Is the adventurer enjoying his tea?" Hanji replied that he was, but sternly added, "Announce your presence the next time you approach." Changing the subject, Hanji then probed, "How did you come to serve Kubalt?" The goblin's response was peculiar. describing his relationship with Kubalt as one of inestimable love.
As Hanji processed this, the first clue clicked into place. Everyone in the city called Kubalt the Great One. Yet this goblin spoke of him with such casual familiarity.
Then, his gaze fell upon a ring on the goblin's finger. "Are you married?" he asked. The goblin chuckled. "You have a sharp eye?" He boasted that it took him 10 years of his salary to acquire this ring. That was the final piece of the puzzle. "Kubalt," Hanji stated, his voice sharp. "It took me too long to see through your little act." He gestured to the ring, the very ruby that Kubalt famously cherished. That, combined with the goblin's overly familiar tone, had sealed his suspicions. "But above all else," Hanji declared, "you were the only one who didn't refer to Kubalt as the Great One."
Realizing his cover was blown, Kubalt had no choice but to drop the facade.
Now, in his true form, the Demon King spoke. "I know that I stand before the famous Valorstedt Valor."
Formally introducing himself, Kubalt declared, "I am the law of Plisson City. I assume you're here to discuss the incident involving Valpurgis." Hanji confirmed his suspicion, stating he hoped to gain any vital information Kubalt possessed.
The castle's owner admitted he was hesitant to help. However, if our hero could meet a single condition, he would provide everything he needed. Hanji had anticipated that Kubalt would propose a deal, so he cut straight to the point. And what would that condition be? Even before hearing the answer, the protagonist knew Kubalt's greatest obsession was knowledge, a fact well established in the past.
Hanji held priceless intel, from the outcomes of future wars to information on real estate speculation.
He was ready for any demand. But to his utter shock, Kubalt's request was deceptively simple. He wanted to become friends with Valorstedt Valor. Kubalt explained that Valor's name was now on everyone's lips, especially after he single-handedly subdued the monstrous Hexac. Not only that, but he was also growing closer to the Empire's most legendary paladin, fueling rumors of a fated romance between him and Valpurgis. For these reasons and more, Kubalt wanted an alliance. He sought a connection with Valor, sensing its immense future value. But our hero cut straight to the point. "And why should I be your friend?" In response, Kubalt presented a small object, revealing, "This is a communication ring. With this," he said, "we can speak across any distance." But the main character was wary of forging ties with such a man. Sensing this, Kubalt made a promise, declaring that in the name of their new friendship, he would provide any information Valor required. As a show of good faith, he offered a critical piece of intel, a clue hidden within the capital of the Duchy of Saxon. That capital, of course, was the city of Dresden. Following this lead, our hero set out immediately.
When guards tried to block his path into the city, he simply revealed his system screen, and the soldiers were paralyzed by pure terror.
Hanju's gaze turned ice cold as he warned them never to stand in his way again. Once inside, he strode through the streets, his system screen blazing for all to see. The effect was instantaneous. Citizens fell to their knees in fear, terrified of provoking his wrath. Hanji Wu thought to himself, "Reaching my goal has never been this simple." He arrived at the Merchants Guild in no time. "In seat." A woman's voice rang out, announcing that an unknown and extremely dangerous individual was approaching the guild. Just then, our protagonist stepped through the doors, his glowing system screen striking awe and fear into the woman. Soon, he stood face to face with the guild leader himself, who asked, "Why would a being of your stature come to a place like this?" Hanju dismissed his system window, his voice low and steady. "I have come to make a deal with the leader of the Merchants Guild." His mind raced back to what Kubalt had told him about this very city, Dresden. He'd revealed that both the Merchants Guild and the city's noble Ritter family were drowning in a mountain of debt. This was the kind of deep, hidden information our hero never had access to. As expected, Kubalt's knowledge was terrifyingly vast. After all, this was the same man who had outsmarted him in battles of information countless times before. His intelligence network was a web that covered the entire continent, earning him the title, King of Shadows. Kubalt had seen the satisfaction in our hero's eyes, knowing the information was valuable. But even then, the King of Shadows had more secrets to share. Back in the present, Hanji Wu faced the guild leader. The guild leader introduced his daughter, Marin, explaining she was now confined to her bed, unable to move. Not long ago, Marin had been a perfectly healthy child. Then, one day, all strength vanished from her arms, leaving her unable to even lift a fork. Soon, the mysterious ailment consumed her entire body. Her desperate father had hired the best doctors from across the land, but none of their treatments worked. He confessed the pain of watching his daughter waste away, unable to see her smile like she used to. But as a father, he refused to abandon hope. He pleaded with the powerful adventurer to save his child. First, our protagonist corrected him, telling the guild leader to simply call him Valor. He then stated his purpose. He was here to make a deal. Looking at Marin, Valor could see her condition was critical. Her muscles had atrophied, and her body was racked with severe malnutrition. He knew instantly that no conventional medicine could cure this affliction. But the good news was, he knew a way. The father's eyes lit up as he asked what was needed. Hanju's answer was simple: an elixir from a place called Gross-Glockner. The man's face fell. He knew that name well, and the request made saving his daughter seem utterly impossible. He was certain that retrieving what the protagonist asked for was a hopeless task. Gross-Glockner is a treacherous canyon, located deep in the southeastern part of the empire.
While its vistas are legendary, it is far more infamous as the lair of the terrifying demonic dragon, Schwarzatoto.
One of the few ancient dragons left on the continent. Schwarzatoto wields power so immense that even demon kings dare not provoke him. The canyon he rules is a nightmare realm, swarming with countless demonic beasts. It is, simply put, a land of certain death for humans and demons alike, an impossible challenge for any mortal. However, our protagonist was no mere mortal. He reassured the guild leader, stating he would venture into that hell and retrieve the elixir himself.
A spark of hope ignited in the man's soul. But at the same time, a dreadful fear took hold. For he believed no one could return from Gross-Glockner alive.
But Hanju insisted that the true cure Miri needed wasn't some elixir, but the warmth of her father's love. Deeply moved, the girl's father asked why he would offer such help. Hanju revealed his condition. He was aware of the Ritter family's crushing debt. In exchange for saving Mireen, he wanted that debt completely erased. The guild leader was stunned by the proposition, but his daughter's entire future was on the line. The mere thought of seeing her healthy again made refusal impossible. He swore an oath to honor their pact the moment his daughter recovered. Sometime later, the protagonist arrived at the legendary Gross-Glockner. He savored the crisp air and the ethereal moonlight. Glancing down, his eyes caught sight of exceedingly rare herbs. He knew instantly that legendary potions could be brewed from these flowers. He then warned his horse not to dare touch them. Gross-Glockner was a forbidden zone, so treacherous that guards were posted to keep everyone out. But for our main character, a few persuasive words were all it took to gain exclusive entry. He knew the truth of this place. Every blade of grass was saturated with dragon mana, making everything a potential ingredient. In other words, the very soil beneath his feet was more precious than gold. Wasting no time, he began harvesting every potential remedy in sight. This bounty would not only cure the guildmaster's daughter, but would also fetch a legendary price. Of course, the most potent items would be reserved for his own arsenal. But as he worked, a stone suddenly struck him hard on the head. From the shadows emerged a goblin, ordering him off this sacred mountain. It wasn't alone, an entire army stood behind it, declaring this was no domain for humans. A short while later, under Hanji Wu's piercing gaze, those very goblins were diligently tilling the fields. But when he saw one working carelessly, the protagonist's sharp voice cut through the air. "Dig with precision," he commanded. "If you damage those roots, I will send every last one of you back to your graves." Hanji Wu's voice dripped with annoyance. Have I made myself perfectly clear? Just moments before, this goblin horde had dared to challenge him. It was a fatal error. He unleashed his power, draining their life force and felling them all in a single, effortless strike. But for them, death was not the end. Hanju activated his skill once more, breathing unholy life into their corpses and instantly creating an army of zombie laborers. This way, he wouldn't have to toil in the fields himself. Back in the present, Hanju Wu mused. Attacking an opponent you couldn't possibly win against was a foolish choice, wasn't it, Kurarak? His new servant bowed low, replying that they were blind to his true majesty, and thanked him for giving them a new purpose. The protagonist let out a dark chuckle, saying he should be the one expressing gratitude for their diligent work. Changing the subject, he asked, "Who else resides in these canyons besides your kind?" Kurarak immediately reported, "Beyond us goblins, this canyon is home to countless other monsters. Werewolves, dire worms, giant centipedes, and hordes of ogres, my lord." Hanju noted his new servant's perfect memory, remarking it was a wise choice to keep him alive. Kurarak declared it was his highest honor to serve. Suddenly, a voice emanated from his ring. On the other end, Kubalt asked if he had forgotten the ring was a two-way communication device. Hanju confirmed. "Yes, I had. What do you need?" The Demon King inquired. "How are things in Gross-Glockner?" Hanju replied. "The water is pure, the breeze is refreshing, and the moonlight is magnificent." Kubalt mentioned that the city of Plusen was buzzing in preparation for a festival, and invited the main character to join if he found the time. "But the real reason for my call," Kubalt's tone sharpened, "is that Valpurgis paid a visit to the Ritter family. Just as our hero had predicted, they came demanding an outrageous settlement. They even threatened to seize the goods intended for trade with Roland. In short, it was tyranny." A cold glint appeared in the protagonist's eyes. "They've gone too far." Kubalt warned that this was merely the beginning. He wished Valpurgis would be more reasonable, but Hanju knew better. "She will never accept those terms. Then buy us more time," he commanded, "for the sake of their friendship." Kubalt agreed to do as he asked. With the deal struck, our hero promised a reward worthy of this favor when they next met. The Demon King seemed quite intrigued. After all, a treasure from the gold mine of Grossglockner was a gift fit for royalty. Noticing the sounds of labor in the background, he decided to end the call, stating that he wouldn't disturb him any further. Han Ji-woo felt a wave of relief as the line went dead. He was only tolerating that Demon King for Valpurgis's sake. But any hope for a moment's peace was shattered when Kurak approached him with a grim look. "We have a serious problem," he announced. Han Ji-woo's eyes then fell upon a new wave of threats. A pack of hulking ogres had arrived to offer their own violent welcome. With a steely calm, the protagonist ordered Kurak to fall back. He could already sense his goblin minions had been utterly annihilated. Worse still, a quick analysis revealed the ogres were immune to his blood absorption. Summoning more goblins was completely pointless. They would be nothing but fodder against monsters of this caliber. Hanju sighed. It seemed if he wanted this done right, he'd have to handle it personally. He focused his mana, calling forth Rublana, one of the Empire's 12 legendary swords, the unbreakable treasure of House Paltz. The moment the blade appeared, the ogre's aggressive posture faltered. "They recognize this weapon," the protagonist noted with a smirk. And how could they not? Rublana was a blade famous for cleaving through darkness itself. He remembered calling Philip a fool for holding such a treasure, completely oblivious to its true power. But now, in the hands of its rightful master, the protagonist unleashed its fury. After felling the first ogre in a single flash of steel, Hanju moved to encircle the rest. He moved like a phantom, so swift his enemies couldn't even track his afterimage. He wasn't just unseen. He was actively toying with his prey. Before the ogres could even mount a defense, Hanju cut them down, leaving no opening for a counterattack. Afterward, he reflected that before this fight, he was uncertain he could even wield this technique. But now, witnessing the devastating results, he couldn't help but admire his own flawless execution. And he wasn't the only one impressed. His new servant watched the display with utter disbelief and awe. Our protagonist simply scoffed, claiming this was a shadow of his former peak. But in the very next moment, his confidence was shattered. A new entity lunged from the shadows, demanding, "What do you think you're doing here?" Hanju barely had time to wonder where it came from. Before he could process the attack, the creature had him in its grip. With a vicious snarl, it threatened, "I'm going to snap your insignificant neck." For the first time, our protagonist faced an opponent whose power mirrored his own. With no effort at all, his new foe hurled him through the air. As he crashed to the ground, Hanju knew this was no ordinary monster. A single blow had wiped out 10% of his health. The enemy narrowed her eyes. "You're durable. State your name," Hanju shot back. "You first." A dangerous smirk played on her lips. "I am the master of Grossglockner." Hanjus's eyes went wide with shock. "The demon dragon," he uttered in disbelief. He never imagined she would take a humanoid form, expecting a beast of legend. The enemy stepped closer, her gaze analytical. "There's something different about you," she mused. "Your life force. It doesn't belong to this world." Kurak bravely moved to stand before Hanju, declaring, "I will protect my master." But the dragon roared, "Enough of your pathetic arrogance, I will end you both, right here and now." Hanju quickly held up a hand. "Wait, hear me out," he said. When she refused to listen, the protagonist made a final, desperate gambit. "If I die, you die with me." That audacious claim stopped her dead in her tracks. "What foolishness are you spouting?" she demanded, pressing him for an answer. Hanju explained calmly, "I am prone to prophetic dreams, and in one of them, I saw your fate." "In that dream," he continued, "I witnessed the demon dragon meet a horrific end." His story sounded utterly absurd, but Hanju played his trump card. "If you doubt my words, read my memories for yourself." As she reached for his head, her razor-sharp claws accidentally pricked his skin. After a moment's hesitation, she declared, "Fine, but if this is a lie," she warned with chilling intent, "your death will be agonizing." With that, she began to delve, but the instant she made contact, a bizarre and overwhelming sensation washed over her. His mind was a maelstrom, a chaotic flood of concepts far beyond her comprehension. Hanju's voice echoed in her consciousness. "Ignore the rest, focus only on what matters." But despite his warning, her curiosity drew her deeper into the chaos. To stop her from uncovering his true secrets, Hanju forcefully projected the one vision he needed her to see. The dragon sensed his manipulation, but trapped within his mindscape, she had no choice but to watch. A moment later, she saw it, her true form, locked in a battle to the death, and then she saw the outcome. The protagonist hadn't been lying. That terrifying glimpse was all the proof she needed. With a strangled gasp, she ripped her consciousness out of Hanju's mind. Meanwhile, the protagonist breathed a silent sigh of relief. That was too close. She almost saw everything. Still trembling, the demon dragon could only murmur, Who in this world is strong enough to kill me?" Regaining her composure, she declared, "I will leave you be. This mountain is yours to command."
Not so fast, Hanju countered. I want to make a deal. First, your name is far too long. From this day forward, your name is Shui. The dragon's expression turned to one of pure indignation. Hanju simply reassured her. This is your path to survival. But she refused, scoffing. I am an ancient being, thousands of years old.
Despite their doubts, the main character was firm. "Just hear me out." In that instant, a notification echoed in Hanju's mind. A new mission, earn the dragon's trust. The difficulty was chillingly high. Moments later, a serpent slithered through the undergrowth, only to be obliterated by a single, indifferent step. A booming voice declared, "I am the master of the deep, dark abyss, the undisputed king of chaos and entropy. My name is Odgash, the demon king." But just as his declaration reached its peak, his servant dared to interrupt. "My lord, we are nearly at our destination."
We cannot afford to stop here. But Odgash merely scoffed at the warning.
"I am making my glorious entrance. I will not tolerate being rushed." His servant quickly bowed in apology, but Odgash waved him off.
Forget it. You've already shattered the atmosphere. Just then, a woman appeared, her voice cutting through the air like ice. That servant answers to me, she proclaimed.
"Not to the demon king?" Odgash let out a dark chuckle. "Ah, Cologne. So, you finally arrived? My dear daughter. As I promised," he continued. "Once this war is won, I will grant you your heart's deepest desire." Even as Cologne insisted she had no need of it, Odgash's smile never faded. "As your father, it is only my duty to provide." He then turned to address his legions. "Gross-Glockner is the domain of the demon dragon. The beasts she commands are mere trifles, but the dragon herself will be a formidable opponent. Still, you have nothing to fear. Your only task is to devour everything you see, and mercilessly crush all life beneath your feet." Finally, Odgash's voice thundered across the valley. "Follow my lead, and victory is absolute." With his monstrous children's spirits ignited, he began the march toward their goal. Back with our hero, he was briefing his own small crew. He informed them that, despite being harassed by strange creatures and a dragon who wouldn't listen, their primary goal was to secure as many rare herbs as they could for Dresden. With his orders given, he sent the goblins back to their task. After that short, motivating speech, Karak presented his master with a refreshing mandra drink. As he drank, he reflected, stumbling upon a dragon in a place like this would have been a death sentence, if not for the memories of his past lives. Even so, he could feel it in his bones. This playthrough was fundamentally different from all the others. From Philip's strange behavior to the dragon's sudden appearance. And he certainly couldn't forget Valparis, who had finally shown him her true face. He decided it was time to consult his system for answers. And just as he suspected, our main character realized this wasn't the first time the world had deviated from the script. Every single event so far had been altered from his memories. He concluded that whatever lay ahead would be completely uncharted territory. Hanju knew every map in Gross-Glockner by heart, down to the last pebble. It made no sense for him to be so lost about the dragon's territory.
Something was terribly, fundamentally wrong with this world.
The war for Harfame, the clash between the Steel Elector and Pahamut, Friedrich's betrayal and the Steel Elector's aid, the crisis at Valpurgis's Grand Convent. The grand stages of destiny remained the same, but the scenes being played out were entirely new. Yet he couldn't grasp what had changed. Was there some vital piece of the puzzle he was overlooking? His thoughts were shattered by a sudden cry from the goblins. The protagonist rushed over to see what was wrong. One of the goblins explained he'd only injured himself while harvesting. Hanju reminded them to be cautious. He'd given them precise instructions for a reason. Some of these plants were lethally dangerous. As he tried to return to his deep thoughts, his eyes caught something. The injured goblin had a brother comforting him. He froze, a memory surfacing. Charlotte, and her younger sister, a detail that existed only in this current timeline. In that instant, like a bolt of lightning, the truth seared through his mind.
Every event from this run flashed before his eyes. He understood now. When his position in the world changed, his entire perspective had changed with it.
In his past lives, he was the legendary Steel Elector, the ruler of an empire, even the prophesied hero who saved the world. He possessed godlike abilities to match those epic titles. But now he was just a nameless mercenary, a shadow of his former selves. The only power he had left were his memories. On the other hand, he knew he had done something different this time. He had forged genuine bonds with characters who were once just scripted NPCs. Simply seeing the real face of Valparis made this entire journey worthwhile. In any other life, Hanju would have simply paid her debt and left. He never would have known the truth of her circumstances. Lost in this revelation, he finally pinpointed the source. Everything began to shift. The moment he met Aquila, The exact moment she gave him the missing puzzle piece, the key required to unlock the game's true ending. A mysterious new space was born from that encounter. And with it, a new version of himself was forged. The world was finally starting to make sense. He could see the threads of fate, and he knew that Aquila was the one pulling the strings. Sensing his master's strange behavior, Kurak voiced his concern, but his words were cut short by a deafening explosion nearby. Shubi suddenly appeared, her words confirming the impossible. Hanju simply stated this was all part of Aquila's grand design. The demon dragon couldn't grasp his meaning, but Hanju continued with a chilling smile, explaining that Aquila had just made this deadly game far more thrilling. Shubi, however, was still completely baffled, not understanding a single word. Despite the confusion, Hanju's eyes blazed with new resolve, declaring he would show Aquila the true way to savor this world. From this moment forward, he would follow his own path. A new strategy was beginning now. His sudden change left everyone else utterly bewildered. Meanwhile, the Demon King Odgash was unleashing his fury, tearing the landscape apart in a terrifying display of raw power. His entire legion roared in approval, glorifying his might. But suddenly, his daughter's voice cut through the chaos, sensing an approaching presence. The demon dragon, Odgash questioned with a hint of excitement. But as the figures came into view, he scoffed. Merely a human and a goblin. His daughter, however, corrected him urgently. Father, they are not alone. Then, a thunderous roar shook the very earth. Odgash's eyes lit up with anticipation. The true opponent he had craved was finally here. Shubi glared down Odgash and his army, her voice like ice as she commanded them to leave her territory. Odgash only grinned, claiming he'd waited an eternity for this moment, that he was here for her and her alone. He made a tempting offer, but Shubi rejected it without a second thought. Her gaze flickered towards our protagonist. The signal had been given. She fell into a battle stance, daring her foe to make the first move. Odgash finally realized he'd been talking to himself the whole time. His opponent hadn't even registered his words. In a flash, Shubi teleported Odgash from the battlefield, leaving the rest to our hero. Hanju had anticipated Odgash's invasion, but it was happening far earlier than in the original timeline. He could have just ignored it. But the demon dragon was a crucial piece for his future plans. He couldn't let her fall here. Besides, the continent's greatest beauty, Lady Callione, stood before him. A true honor. She removed her helmet and stepped forward, her army arrayed behind her. The sight of her triggered a vital memory for our protagonist. Depending on a player's choices, Callione was the ultimate wildcard, a high-risk character who could become a powerful ally or a devastating enemy, with power that eclipsed even Bahamut's. There was a reason they called her the Ice Queen. Recruiting her for his grand strategy was absolutely essential. He had to win her over, no matter the cost. Seizing the opportunity, Hanju spoke smoothly. You are even more breathtaking in person. His reward was a cold spear point pressed against his throat. Both Callione and her loyal retainer issued a deadly threat. With perfect composure, our protagonist replied with dry sarcasm. My only desire is an audience with the princess. Perhaps you could arrange that. Enraged, the princess's servant lunged to attack. But Kurak, fiercely protective, instantly leaped forward to defend his master. Hanju mused with pride. My favorite goblin is so fiercely loyal. Kurak then roared at the enemy. If you wish to harm my master, you'll have to go through me first.
Our protagonist observed the goblin's transformation. This was a far cry from the coward who once fled from Shubi's mere presence.
Turning his attention back to the princess, Hanju taunted. It seems my servant's loyalty puts yours to shame. As if on cue, a whip lashed through the air, completely ensnaring the retainer. From the shadows emerged Hexax, a vampire under Hanju's complete control. He had been saving this trump card for the perfect moment, and now he had unleashed his thrall to neutralize this foe. But Hexax wasn't the only warrior summoned to face the Dark Nun. Pfeifenheim had now joined the battle as well. She swore an oath. I will cut down anyone who dares to threaten my master. Callione watched in shock as our hero commanded vampires at his whim. On his side, a vast army of the Reborn stood ready. On her side, a terrifying multitude of monsters. The princess acknowledged that her adversary wielded a powerful network, but she countered with confidence. Beside me stands a legion of demons, loyal to Lord Odgash. Addressing her troops, Callione issued the command, attack the enemy, leave no one alive. At her word, her forces charged forward like a tidal wave. From the other side, our protagonist's reborn servants surged to meet them. The masters themselves didn't hesitate, clashing in the heart of the chaotic fray. Callione's power forced our protagonist back. She declared that anyone who could block her attack possessed strength even greater than Bahamut's. Hanju admitted that having his power recognized by the princess herself was indeed an honor. But, he said with deep regret, it's a shame you're loyal to Odgash. If your true father could see you now. He would weep tears of blood.
Our protagonist knew her hidden past. She was Lady Calione Romania Kamars, the only daughter of the former Level 1 Demon Lord. Kamars?
Calione's eyes narrowed. What else do you know? Our protagonist let out a low laugh, prompting her to demand, "Why are you laughing?"
Hanju found the irony to be absolutely delicious. That she had become so ignorant as to follow the very monster who defeated her own father? Calione was stunned into silence, the revelation shaking her to her core. What? What are you talking about?
She demanded. To Cologne. Her father was the most revered being in all existence. The warmth in his eyes was her sanctuary, a source of unshakable peace that inspired all demons to believe in themselves. Cologne was boundlessly proud of her father. He was her entire world. But that world was shattered the day he died.
Kamars was tragically slain by Gorkalgam and Kalus, and in the ashes of her despair, Odgash took her in.
Back then, he swore he shared her burning hatred. Lord Kamars, he claimed, was not just his master, but his very soul, his dearest friend.
Odgash spoke of a coming dawn, promising that when the stars aligned, he would help her claim her vengeance. Returning to the present, fury blazed in Cologne's heart as the protagonist dared to insult her master. Hanju declared that her situation was indeed desperate, but urged her to witness something first.
With that, he tossed a sphere of light to Cologne, elsewhere. Odgash faced the demon dragon, proclaiming that this was all a grand romance. He saw this bloody battle as a twisted, epic tale. Shui, however, accused him of inflicting a deep wound upon Cologne. Odgash simply retorted that his hands were clean of Kaimar's death. Goro, Kalgum, and Callus were the true murderers. But Shui scoffed, refusing his pathetic excuses, because she knew the entire rotten truth.
Odgash called his foe persistent. Then a smirk spread across his face. You're right. After all, those two fools could never have killed Kamars alone.
And with that confession, the mask finally shattered. He revealed how he'd given them Kaimar's only weakness, a secret they craved like starving beasts. Little did he know, Cologne was hearing his every word. The sphere the protagonist had thrown was no weapon. It was an image transmitter. As the truth crashed down on her, Cologne's world fell apart. The man she'd seen as a second father was her mortal enemy. The protagonist knew his gambit was working. He had coordinated this entire play with Shui, who provided the magical projector. He had instructed her to use it mid-battle, to force Odgash into confessing his sins while fighting for his life. Shui hadn't understood the reason, but Hanju stressed it was the linchpin of his entire strategy. Now, in the present, Cologne's assault had stopped, her mind reeling from the devastating revelation. The protagonist noted that Shui played her part to perfection. The plan was a success. Now, the rest was up to him. Through her tears, Cologne choked out that her entire life, her devotion, was all built on Odgash's twisted lies. She remembered his constant presence by her side since childhood. In that moment of despair, Hexax announced that her work was finished. The protagonist simply ordered her to hold her ground, utterly defeated. Cologne whispered that she'd served her true enemy for 50 long years. The sheer weight of this ultimate betrayal threatened to crush her very soul. But the protagonist offered her a new path. Not sorrow, but vengeance. From this day forward, he would teach her Kaimar's right of the true name. What she chose to do with that absolute power would be her choice alone. Cologne gasped in disbelief. It's been so long since I've heard those words. A spell that commands the power of the cosmos itself, strong enough to wound an archdemon. It was that very power that had crowned her father the greatest of all demon lords. But doubt crept in. Only my father knew those secrets, she said. How could a mere stranger possibly know them? Hanju smiled to himself. Thanks to his guide, he knew Kaimar's legacy inside and out. The overwhelming power of the right, his true name, and even his single fatal weakness. But for now, he just had to tell Cologne a story that would win her over. The protagonist explained that he studied the Chronicles of the Seven Demon Wars, an ancient text detailing how to resist the archdemon. And recorded within its pages was Kaimar's right of the true name, a technique of legendary power. Cologne had to admit his story made sense, which brought a faint smile to the protagonist's lips. But it's useless, she declared. I cannot help you defeat Odgash, for he is an immortal. She recounted how, before becoming her father's vassal, Odgash was struck by that very spell. It left him crippled. But even her father could not finish the job. However, the hero simply replied, There, you are gravely mistaken. He gestured to the figures surrounding her. These comrades are my vampire army, as strong as you are. You cannot face them all alone. Hanju then presented his ultimatum. Will you follow me, he asked, or will you die, right here? The question unleashed a storm in Cologne's heart. A memory flashed through her mind, telling her father that she would one day become a great demon lord, just like him. Her father had told her that if she was truly serious, she would have to become even stronger than he was. She had asked if that was even possible. He had said yes, that he believed in her, because after all, she was his daughter. Returning to the present, she looked at the protagonist with tear-filled eyes. Can I truly defeat Odgash? Han Jae-woo was baffled by her tearful question. Even his companions were stunned by the sight. But Piffenheim explained that in demon years, Kalane was merely a child. Meanwhile, Kurak worried his master was ignoring a far greater threat, not far away. Odgash was locked in a furious clash with Shui. Yet, despite facing a legendary foe, he felt no trace of fatigue. He sneered, a flicker of disappointment in his eyes. But Shui merely scoffed at his taunts, ready to continue their deadly dance. Her mission was to stall this monster. But Odgash grew impatient with her evasive tactics. More than that, he had truly expected her to accept his twisted offer. Instead of siding with him, Shui rejected Odgash utterly, unleashing a torrent of scorching dragonfire. But even that inferno couldn't defeat him easily. Odgash was stronger than she ever imagined. He didn't just defend, he retaliated with brutal force, radiating absolute confidence. "If it's a real fight you crave," he roared, "then I will gladly oblige." He vanished, reappearing before Shui in an instant and slamming her into the earth with bone-shattering force. Reeling from the impact, Shui vowed revenge. She embraced her true nature, attacking Odgash in her magnificent, full dragon form. The collision sent tremors through the very land. Meanwhile, the protagonist warned Kurak, "Be careful where you step." Hexak, watching them, found the interaction utterly adorable. She saw the little goblin as her master's treasured pet. Piffenheim hurried to his master's side, sensing Shui's mana surging uncontrollably. "She's breaking through the polymorph," he observed with alarm. But his ally still wondered, could even Lady Shui truly withstand such a monstrous enemy? Han Ji-woo knew the battles at Grossglockner were taking a massive toll on her. Then, a brilliant idea sparked in his mind. He called out to Kalane, declaring he had a vital mission just for her. "Do you accept the challenge?" he asked. Without a moment's hesitation, she replied, "I will." Nearby, the ferocious battle between dragon and demon raged on. Shui attacked relentlessly, but Odgash gave no ground. "I am thoroughly enjoying this test of power," he boasted. Shui unleashed her fiery breath, yet Odgash deflected it with arrogant ease. Realizing this, Shui intensified her assault, finally landing a thunderous blow that dealt significant damage. But Odgash just laughed it off, demanding more to satisfy his insatiable hunger for battle. Shui called him an arrogant fool, asserting she wasn't even using her true strength. "If I were," she warned, "the destruction of a planet would seem trivial." But Odgash remained completely unfazed. He retorted that he also had tricks of his own. With his axe, he unleashed a cataclysmic strike. The force was so immense it sent her careening across the sky, carving a path of destruction through the landscape. In the aftermath, Odgash gloated, "I never expected a demon dragon to be this pathetic. To think I could defeat her so easily." After that devastating blow, Shui reverted to her weaker humanoid form. Odgash approached her. "I've discovered the source of your weakness, Shui. You are chained to this very place. And I must admit, I'm curious why." But instead of answering, Shui only glared with defiance. Odgash sighed. "Unyielding, even at the very end. But now, your story is over." However, just as he moved to deliver the final blow, the protagonist appeared, stopping the attack cold and landing a powerful strike on Odgash. Shui sighed in relief that he was finally here, but added, "You're late." Han Ji-woo shot back, "You look terrible." A comment Shui definitely did not appreciate. Odgash rose to his feet, demanding, "What did you do with Kalane?" Hanju simply replied, "You're about to find out." With that, he gave a signal to the sky above. Kalane descended like an avenging angel, asking, "Odgash, is there something you forgot to tell me?" Seeing her, Odgash declared she had finally mastered the rite of true naming. He ordered her to use that magic against the protagonist. But the hero had heard enough. He urged Kalane to deliver swift justice to her father's murderer. Odgash, however, feigned innocence, claiming Kamar was his best friend and that he would never have harmed him. Shui stepped forward, confronting the demon with the cold, hard truth. She revealed that every word Odgash spoke had been transmitted. Kalane knew everything. At this, his facade shattered, and he roared that his enemies were conspiring against him. Han Jae-woo commanded Shui to trap Odgash before he could flee. Shui invoked her territorial authority, binding the enemy with powerful, ancient roots. Not only that, but a magical seal also erupted, caging him completely. Yet Odgash remained unfazed, declaring they could all attack him at once if they had the guts. Kalane was the first to strike, unleashing her magic against her former ally. Her heart blazed with hatred, and she poured all her rage into that single, devastating assault. Odgash was engulfed by the full brunt of the magical onslaught. Afterwards, Kalane felt utterly drained, having poured so much of her life force into that attack. The enemy, however, was in far worse shape, having taken the full impact. Remembering her father, Kalane's emotions began to surge again, but there was no time for tears now. But the beast wasn't finished. It staggered back to its feet, leaving her completely stunned, refusing to let Cologne be the target. Our hero leaped into the fray. The monster, Odgash, roared with fury, its pride wounded by a mere human. But rage alone wouldn't be enough to save it.
With the beast's attention now locked on him, Hanju made a brilliant move, seizing Odgash's own horn to use as a weapon.
He declared the ancient truth for killing an immortal. It must be struck down by a part of its own body. With a single devastating blow, he drove the horn home, finally vanquishing the unkillable foe. Immediately, the system lit up, showering him with the rewards of his victory. Meanwhile, Shubi rushed to Cologne's side, casting healing magic. She warned her that she had barely survived, having poured nearly all of her mana into that last attack. But victory was finally theirs. Now that the dust had settled, Cologne felt lost, unsure of her purpose. However, the main character extended an invitation for her to join his party. In that moment, Cologne knew she had finally found a place to belong. A short while later, Marin, the guild leader's daughter, was finally awake. She complained about the medicine's bitter taste, but her father insisted she drink every last drop. After all, Lord Valor and his party had risked their lives to bring it back. Marin then asked if her father would grant her wish once the medicine was gone. He promised he would. At the same time, our hero brought up their agreement, but the guild leader ushered them away, out of his daughter's earshot. In private, the protagonist got straight to the point, asking if the debt issue had been resolved. The guild leader confessed there was fierce opposition from the debtors. Why were they kicking up such a fuss? He explained that the problem stemmed from a powerful figure, the Elector of Saxony. The Elector had personally met with the guildmaster, declaring the debtors were VIP clients, and that he would not approve of their arrangement. He even used their long-standing alliance as a thinly veiled threat. If the merchant simply arranged a meeting for him, the Elector promised he could make this whole situation disappear. Hanju instantly saw through the plot. They were causing this chaos because they feared losing their connection to Saxony's power if the debt was paid. To our hero, it was no wonder those scoundrels from Leiter were acting so recklessly. A direct confrontation between the Emperor and the House of Bayern would have been an evenly matched fight. But throwing the Elector of Saxony into the mix tipped the scales into disastrous territory. He now understood Valpurgis's deep anxiety and began to desperately search for a way to help her. Seeing the hero's concern, the merchant suggested an alternative plan to break the stalemate. But Hanju cut him off, asking pointedly, "Are you skilled at negotiation, elsewhere, at a noble estate?" Dreadful news arrived. Saxony was officially siding against them. The noble despaired. If his family had just recognized the debt transfer, they could have extended the deadline. But now, he wailed, they had absolutely nothing left. The messenger confirmed there was nothing more to be done. The noble ordered his servant to the capital at once, even if it meant begging at the emperor's feet. He roared that this matter must be resolved, by any means necessary, and to return only when it was settled. Back with our hero, a system notification popped up. His summon undead skill proficiency had increased. This was a game changer. He could now summon his allies in the light of day. To test this new power, he called for Piffenheim. She appeared instantly, completely unharmed by the broad daylight. Hanju declared that his vampires had now become true daywalkers. With this power, he assigned her a special mission. The main character revealed a sealed document, instructing his ally to deliver it to a man named Reeb Saltz. He stressed that the document was of the utmost importance, and that she must deliver it with extreme care. Shortly after, the guildmaster announced that everything Lord Valor had requested for his departure was ready. He presented a breathtaking carriage crafted by a master artisan, a luxury that even high-ranking nobles rarely possessed. He explained that he pulled some strings to acquire it, and had also included the herb payment and travel funds, ensuring Valor would want for nothing. But he couldn't help but ask, "What exactly do you plan to do with such an extravagant item?" Han Jae-woo smirked. "Perhaps I'll use it to smash the heads of those who opposed our deal." Marin then appeared to see them off. Our hero advised her to still be careful, even though she was feeling healthier. In return, the young girl said she had a gift for Valor, and then surprised him with a kiss on the cheek. Not just the protagonist, but everyone watching was left completely stunned by her audacious gesture. Marin smiled. "That's a thank you gift." After their farewells, the girl and her father finally headed home. Along their journey, Marin calls upon her father's promise to grant her one wish. She then makes a stunning declaration. "My wish is to become Lord Valor's bride." She confesses that she was completely captivated from the moment they met. Her father, however, is anything but pleased by this shocking turn of events. Meanwhile, far from there, our protagonist and his companions press onward. Cologne remarks that Marine truly has the heart of a warrior, surprised she would make such a bold play to win Valor's affection. Still, She adds with a cynical tone that Lord Valor seems far more interested in gold than in romance. Hanju scoffs, claiming they just don't get it. He insists that this is simply how the world turns, it all comes down to money. But when he catches the disapproving stares from Cologne's nuns, he immediately quiets down, a nervous sweat on his brow.
A timely call saves him. It's Kubalt, who had just heard Valor returned from Grossglockner and is overjoyed to learn he's alive.
Our protagonist assures him that he is perfectly fine and ready for his next move. By the way, Kubalt asks, have our enemies already pulled back? His ravens spotted their departure instantly, which is why he called. The intelligence report had just come in. Hanju jumps in. That was fast, so what's the verdict? Kubalt confirms that events are unfolding exactly as Valor had predicted. Just as planned, their enemies left for the capital that morning. And by all accounts, they were absolutely seething with rage. The main character smirks, admitting he might be partly responsible for their foul mood. Then he adds ominously, and I have a few more surprises waiting for them. Kubalt adds that Roland, the infamous Rose Demon, is said to be in the capital now. Hearing this, Valor's eyes gleam.
He asks Kubalt to start spreading a very specific rumor throughout the city. Kubalt chuckles. You're as cunning as they say.
Hanju chimes in, saying this is exactly the kind of covert work their alliance was made for. Kubalt agrees, promising a handsome reward before quickly trying to end the call. But our hero teases him. There's no need to be so bashful. His flustered ally simply says, I'm putting my faith in you. Hanging up now. After the call, the protagonist realizes his words might have been a bit embarrassing after all. Cologne, on the other hand, is astonished to see the protagonist
speaking so casually with the great Kubalt of Planine. His network of contacts was far greater than she could have ever imagined.
Speaking of which, our hero declares he's just had a brilliant idea. A mortified Cologne asks, why are you staring at me like that? Hanju simply pats her shoulder, telling her it's time to do something for the good of the team. Sometime later, in Vienna, the grand capital of the empire, the streets are alive with the sound of chatter and swirling rumors. They say Kaimar's daughter has come to the city. Whispers claim she avenged her father, slaying the monster Odgash with her own hands. The gossip even suggests Kaimar's daughter unleashed her family's legendary secret arts against the beast. Above all, every story agrees on one thing: her beauty is absolutely breathtaking. Amidst the buzz, our hero's carriage arrives, and the crowd instantly believes it carries Kaimar's legendary daughter. Deeply embarrassed, Cologne whispers to the protagonist, is this charade truly necessary? He gives her a single, firm answer. Yes. He explains that her face is now a strategic asset. Cologne argues that the only weapons she wields are swords and battle axes. But he cuts her off. A woman in such a stunning dress should not speak such crude words. The warrior admits she despises being the center of attention and feels her skin crawl with so many eyes waiting for her. Worse yet, she has no idea how to act like a proper noble lady. Hanju reassures her. It is simple. Keep one hand gracefully poised on your cheek, and the other gently resting upon your knees. Combine that with the most captivating expression you can manage, he instructs. Do that, and you will be perfect. Irritated, Cologne snaps back that he knows full well she is a commander, a leader of armies. She belongs in battle armor, not in a delicate dress.
Forcing me to do this will utterly destroy my reputation as a commander, she exclaims, her voice filled with desperation.
But our hero calmly replies that she is free to leave his company at any time. But if you choose to stay, he warns, you will follow my orders.
Backed into a corner, Cologne has no choice. She follows his instructions, placing one hand elegantly on her cheek and the other upon her folded knees.
And then she does the hardest part. She summons the most enchanting expression she can, a look that unleashes her stunning beauty upon the world. The moment they see her, the entire city's jaw drops. Though she burns with embarrassment, Cologne holds her pose perfectly. In a matter of moments, every man in the capital is cheering for her, completely captivated.
Overwhelmed by this thunderous welcome, Cologne is truly stunned by the crowd's reaction. Not far from there, Rowan assembles her entire staff.
She announces that she is about to receive a visitor of the utmost importance. She laments that this is not her true Rose Palace, because this guest is more precious than the Emperor, more significant than any demon. Lord, she declares that she is counting on every single one of them. To the chefs, she gives a command, prepare the greatest feast of your entire lives. To her maids, she gives a single, impossible command, make this place more magnificent than the Rose Palace itself. One of her attendants approaches, announcing that the visitor's arrival is just moments away. Roland rallies her people, her voice ringing with purpose. Give me your absolute best, she commands. This is the most important day of my life. Yet, in the quiet of her heart, a single thought echoes. All of this is for my lord, Kaimar's. Roland's beauty was a song that enchanted every man's heart, earning her the envy of all demons. But her true power was far more profound. With peerless eloquence, she wielded diplomacy like a blade, forging Rose into a nation of immense power. This is how she earned the title, the Bride of Rose. But a secret lay hidden behind her crown, the untold story of her ascent. She had once approached Kymars, confessing he was the only one to whom she could ever reveal her true self.
Believing her devotion was eternal, Roland pleaded for him to accept her unwavering heart.
But a small voice interrupted them. It was young Cologne, asking her father, "Who is this beautiful lady?" He simply called Roland a colleague. Little Cologne then offered Roland a gift, proudly explaining she had baked it herself with her uncle. "Odgash, because you're so pretty," Cologne said with a smile. "I'll give you my very best cookies." In that instant, Roland understood Kymar's refusal. His heart was already promised to another. Later, she found Princess Cologne and made a special request. Would the young princess one day grant a name to a castle of her very own? "It would be a true honor," she said, "if Lady Cologne chose the name for my castle." Inspired by Roland's radiant spirit, the princess suggested a name, the Palace of Roses. Roland adored it and, true to her word, later built a breathtaking castle in its name. Back in the present, Roland and Cologne are finally reunited after so long. "Since Lord Kymars is no longer among us," she began softly, "my highest priority was to find his only living heir, his daughter." And with those words, she knelt gracefully before the young princess. Cologne was awestruck by the grand reception. "If only we were at the Palace of Roses," Roland lamented with a sigh. "I could have prepared a feast worthy of royalty." But Cologne assured her this was more than she could have ever imagined.
Roland then turned her gratitude to Lord Valor for bringing the princess back from the dead, a feat everyone thought impossible.
"I have heard from Count Nerderburn," she continued, "that you overcome challenges in the most unconventional ways." She hinted at a peculiar connection between them, but our main character swiftly changed the subject. Roland sighed, a hint of disappointment in her eyes. "I do enjoy a good love story, but as you wish," she conceded. "We can discuss business." Our hero then revealed the true reason for his visit to deliver a message from Philip, the Elector of Steel. A wave of relief washed over Roland. "He's alive," she whispered, then immediately asked, "Can I see him in person?" Hanju shook his head grimly. "Unfortunately, that is not possible. Philip is in no condition to receive visitors." "In that case," Roland said, her expression hardening, "let's get straight to the heart of the matter." Our protagonist relayed Philip's message. He cannot make a public move at this time. Therefore, he has appointed Valorstead Valor as his proxy with full authority. He requests your aid, Lady Roland, in retaking the capital. "Even if I must lie," he thought, "I have to make her my ally. She is essential to my plans." Margarita was under the curse of he who squats in the grave. It's clear Pazid has the Great Lord's backing. Margarita alone is not enough to defeat him. I cannot personally eliminate someone under the Great Lord's protection. That's why I absolutely need Roland. With her by my side, I can finally put Pazid in his place. With that, Hanju concluded the message. Roland had listened with rapt attention, her gaze unwavering. "To agree," she finally stated. "I have one condition." She explained that Lord Valor must surely be aware of her current predicament. Our hero immediately understood. She was talking about the economic blockade. "If Lord Valor truly represents His Highness," Roland pressed, "then the Emperor cannot ignore your words." Hanju simply smiled. "Do not worry about that," he assured her. "The stage is already set." Meanwhile, at the Imperial Palace, a frantic servant begged for His Majesty's intervention, only to be flatly denied. Emperor Fran IV simply declared, "I regret this," claiming his heart had softened the moment he heard of their plight. The servant insisted, pleading that there had to be some kind of order to resolve this. But the Emperor, surrounded by glittering piles of gold, remained completely unswayed. "Despite the debt agreement," he stated coldly, "they were kind enough to bring the Empire a small tribute. Besides," he added dismissively, "I hear the Vialea Merchants Guild is backing the debtors." The servant, tasked with swaying the Emperor, was now utterly defeated. He would have to return to his master and admit his complete and utter failure. At that very moment, an Imperial soldier appeared. "Lord Valor has arrived, Your Majesty." The Emperor immediately granted him an audience. Stepping into the throne room, the protagonist declared, "It is the highest honor to stand in your magnificent presence." He introduced himself as Valorstead Valor, pledging his sword to the Empire's service. "I have been expecting you," the Emperor said coolly, "and pay no mind to this man here. He is merely a messenger." He dismissed. Still, our hero boldly requested to speak with the Emperor alone. With a flicker of reluctance, His Majesty agreed. The noble's envoy was promptly escorted from the palace. But instead of leaving with dignity, the man pleaded for the Emperor to reconsider his decision. It was utterly useless to pour salt on the wound. As the envoy was dragged away, our protagonist offered a smug smile and a little wave. This final insult left the young noble absolutely burning with rage. Far from the capital, within Odgash's fortress, the defeated demons recounted their failure to his furious daughter. She was incandescent with fury, reminding them she had begged to go. If I had been there, she seethed, I would have crushed them, unlike the incompetent Kalane. Amid her rage, a servant rushed in with urgent news, but she was in no mood to listen. Your ladyship, the servant pressed. The emperor has decreed an economic blockade against our entire region. She stared back, utterly confused. Matters of diplomacy were not her strong suit. The servant, wary of her explosive temper, also seemed uncertain. What does that even mean? She finally demanded. Back in the capital, our protagonist was finally alone with the emperor. Hanju remarked that the capital's prosperity was a clear reflection of His Majesty's magnificent achievements. He felt almost unworthy to stand there, but the emperor waved him off, telling him to dispense with the formalities. The emperor noted that since entering politics, Valor had used Kaimar's daughter to calm anti-demon sentiment in vital territories. He'd even turned enemies into allies. So, the emperor knew Valor was here for a reason, and he demanded to know what it was. In his mind, however, Valor was just a mouse facing a lion, naively believing he could win with mere words. Yet, in his supreme arrogance, the emperor couldn't imagine being outplayed by some freshly minted hero. So he leaned in and asked our protagonist, what is it you truly desire? In response, our hero humbly requested that the economic blockade on the Rose territory be shifted to the domain of the Demon King. Odgash. The emperor wanted to know his angle. A simple friendship treaty with the Rose Kingdom hardly seemed worth the effort. What's more, he scoffed that the ancient Black Widow, Roland, was of no interest to him. But our protagonist asserted that she would obey His Majesty's every command. He then presented a document to the emperor, whose eyes immediately lit up with curiosity. The document stated that Roland herself had agreed to pay a tribute of 10,000 florins annually. But that wasn't all. The emperor challenged him. And what proof do I have that this document is authentic? Hanju explained that Odgash was the most hated villain on the continent. By blockading the Demon King's domain, the emperor would earn the praise of the entire world. The emperor admitted the idea was intriguing, but claimed it wasn't enough justification, stating that politics is not a game of emotion. An irritated Valor thought to himself. He didn't say that when he blocked Roserant just because Roland refused to pay him. But aloud, he pressed his case. Odgash fell in the Great War. His followers are now preparing to challenge the demonic dragon. The seeds of conflict remain, and the Empire's people live in fear. Therefore, the time to act is now. The emperor remarked that Valor truly had a silver tongue. He could likely convince anyone of anything. Hanju thanked him, but knew internally it wasn't a gift for words. In truth, it was a special convincing ability. Valor stated his only desire was to repay His Majesty's grace with this small token of his loyalty. But this seemed to infuriate the emperor. He roared that he would never be fooled by such sweet, cloying lies. He then thundered, "Do you dare test the patience of the man who rules this continent?" In the next breath, he ordered his guards to drag Valor from his sight. Our protagonist was completely blindsided, wondering what just happened. Why would the emperor suddenly react like this? Sometime later, at a party hosted by Roland, Cologne felt out of place, watching her servants eat joyfully while she couldn't enjoy a thing. Even the emperor was having a marvelous time, declaring he'd never had such a pleasant talk as the one he just had with Lord Valor. Our hero himself couldn't possibly understand the emperor's sudden change of heart. But the emperor then declared that from this day on, Valor was to call him uncle. He would accept no more formal titles. Han Jae-woo decided to play along, calling him uncle. The emperor beamed, exclaiming that this was much, much better, a sound infinitely sweeter to his ears. But beyond the palace walls, the disgraced official watches on, consumed by poisonous envy. Seeing the emperor favor Valor, he trembles with fury. That glorious position, it should have been his. He can't fathom how that nobody, Valor, achieved what he never could. From the shadows, an ally breaks the silence. Why resort to kidnapping Valpurgis? Another hooded figure agrees, his voice laced with caution. It's far too dangerous. There must be another way. But the ringleader scoffs at their cowardice. It's not out of the question at all. If we don't act now, he snarls, our entire family will be annihilated. We will proceed with caution, but also with absolute precision. Meanwhile, our protagonist finally collapses in his room, completely drained. Cologne chides him. See, that's what you get for accepting every drink they offered. Hanju just laughs it off. It's called networking, my friend. In my prime, I could handle 7 rounds easily, he boasts. But his rest is shattered by a frantic call from Cobalt, his voice heavy with dread. Our hero groans, clutching his throbbing head, and tries to brush him off. But Cobalt's voice cuts through the line, sharp and urgent. This is no time for games. It's about Valpurgis, he warns, his words instantly sobering Valor up. At that very moment, deep within Ogdash Castle, the Demon King's daughter declares her intent. There is no time to waste. Her father's death must be avenged.
She is Margaret Vontac, and she vows that for her father's vengeance, she would devour the demonic dragon itself if it stood in her way.
Her command thunders through the halls. All warriors prepare for war. She orders them to train without rest until every last one is battle-hardened. Their target, Gross Glockner. They will march as soon as possible. But the princess's advisor urges caution. He reminds her that the emperor has already imposed an economic blockade, and that Valpurgis recently resurrected a saint. The legendary Saint Margaret was brought back to life. Furthermore, the blockade on Roserant is lifted. Roland will surely make a move, complicating everything for us. He pleads with her to plan their next move with the utmost caution. But Margaret is unmoved. She declares that nothing, especially not the weak, will stand in the way of her revenge. Meanwhile, Valpurgis finds herself bound and trapped. "Why are you doing this?" she demands from her captors. The ringleader simply smirks. "Our goal is to persuade the emperor."
He boasts about their hideout, a fortress with iron defenses, completely surrounded by a massive lake.
"Even if the Byron forces attack, they won't be able to touch us." He concludes with absolute certainty. "Our plan cannot possibly fail." But Valpurgis scoffs at their foolishness. "Idiots! Do you truly believe mere gates can protect you?" Her defiance infuriates him. Silence.
"You're far too loud for a hostage. What, are you expecting that bastard Valor to save you?" He sneers.
The memory of his public humiliation by Valor ignites his rage. But Valpurgis retorts coolly. "The humiliation you've suffered is nothing compared to what's coming when I get out." Her captor just laughs. "And what can you possibly do in your current state? You are utterly alone." Suddenly, a subordinate bursts in, his face pale with terror. "We're being invaded." And sure enough, outside, Hanju's entire party has the fortress surrounded. Hexax reports, his voice crisp and clear. "All units are in position, save for Piffenheim on his special mission. We can begin the assault on your command." Even Kurarak eagerly asks if he can join the fight. "Quiet," Hanju commands. "Our mission is twofold: rescue Valpurgis and annihilate every last Ritter. They have crossed a line that can never be uncrossed. I was willing to ignore them as long as they stayed quiet," he declares. "But now, I will see this hunt through to the very end." And with that, his forces storm the fortress.
Hanju issues his orders. "I'll take this flank. Hexax, you handle the other." Kurak immediately begs to follow his master, but Hexax cuts in. "Actually, you're coming with us." Hanju confirms the order, telling Kurak to go with Hexax and his sister.
The goblin freezes, clearly terrified of Hexax. Hanju just sighs in exasperation. "I don't have time to deal with this cowardice."
"We need to move, now." Back in the prison chamber, the captors watch the unfolding invasion with disbelief.
But when the ringleader spots Hanju on the screen, his face twists into a mask of pure hatred. The thirst for revenge is all he can think about. He grabs his sword, just imagining what I'll do to him. He mutters with a sick glee, and with that, he charges headfirst into the fray, seeking out his rival. The Ritter commander shouts at his men, ordering them not to let their comrade fight alone. Meanwhile, Valpurgis hears the clash of steel and knows instantly. He's come for her. A single thought echoes in her mind. He always comes to save me. She remembers how, ever since they first met, he has always been her protector. But this time, the realization only fuels the rage she feels at her own powerlessness. Valpurgis begins to shake with uncontrollable fury. As her rage surges, the very pillar she's tied to starts to splinter and crack under the pressure. Elsewhere, the mastermind behind the plot seethes. Everything was going perfectly, until that damned servant interfered. "I should have gone to the capital myself," he growls in frustration. Suddenly, a sharp noise snaps him to attention. His eyes widen in disbelief. The Countess of Byron has somehow broken free. How could she shatter a reinforced barrier? But then he smirks, convinced she's powerless without her sacred sword. Brimming with confidence, he launches the first strike. But he's caught completely off guard. Valparis not only counters, but with a single blow, shatters his sword into pieces. Ritter's nerve falters, but he roars that this fight isn't over. His arrogance earns him a vicious right hook straight to the jaw. The impact sends a tooth flying from his mouth, Valparis declares. "I can't keep depending on others forever." She's determined to finish this enemy on her own. Ritter tries to argue, but can barely form a word, stammering that this was never part of the plan. Her response is ice cold. "I don't care." But as she moves in for the final blow, Ritter screams out one word: "monster." "How rude, to call a lady a monster," Valparis retorts. Just then, her eyes catch a new presence approaching from the shadows. A true monster crashes onto the scene. Ritter breaks into a maniacal laugh. "My monster has finally awakened now. One monster will face another." He calls the brute Igor and commands it to protect him. Meanwhile, our hero asks his guide, "Am I going the right way?" "Yes," Kubalt replies from afar. "I'm observing through my familiars." And someone named Igor just appeared. Kubalt explains that Igor is the human weapon they've been developing. The very same one who caused the massacre at Ritter's castle.
A creature of pure brutality. Han Jae-woo's expression darkens. This event was never in the original game's storyline.
Just then, a voice calls out his name. Valorstead, Valor! Our hero thanks Kubalt, but says he has to hang up. The conspirator from the Ritter family has finally shown his face, snarling with contempt.
I'll have my revenge, he boasts. But as he taunts our hero, he makes a fatal mistake, leaving his back completely exposed.
In an instant, a shadow soldier strikes from behind. He's knocked out cold with a single blow, face-planting into the dirt. Hanju mutters, "What a waste of my time. I need to hurry." Back at the other battle, Igor attacks the paladin.
Valparis moves like the wind, deftly dodging his brutish attacks, using her incredible speed to her advantage.
Then she feels a strange sense of familiarity. "Were you the one," she asks, "who ambushed me and dragged me to this place?" Regardless, her resolve hardens. As a member of the Walpurga convent, I cannot let my guard down. At the mention of that name, Igor's fury explodes. Valparis is baffled by this sudden, violent change in his behavior.
Ritter explains from the sidelines. The paladin spoke the forbidden word. Igor hates the Walpurga convent.
Now, the Countess's problems have just gotten infinitely worse. Elsewhere, Margaret Vontak was complaining about the camp's poor food. Her servant explained that their finances were in shambles and would only recover if they rescued Lord Von Tush. Their situation was so dire. They had even been forced to sell their castle due to the economic blockade. Margaret demanded to know about the army's condition. Her servant reported they received partial pay and full medical care, but she scoffed that they should only be training, completely dismissing her servant's pleas about their medical needs. She bitterly claimed it was because her father had spoiled all of his servants. The servant murmured that things were better when Lord Odgash was in charge, until an irritated Margaret ordered him to bring her a real piece of meat. The story flashes back in time, to a young Igor attempting to join the Walpurga convent. A nun explained that they proved their faith through physical endurance. But looking at the scrawny boy, she thought he could barely lift a weight, let alone train properly. Though his dedication was admirable, his lack of strength was an impossible hurdle. Not to mention, they only accepted women. It was a convent, after all. Igor carries the resentment from that day to this very moment. Back in the present, he unleashes his fury on Valparis simply because she spoke the name of his childhood trauma.
Ritter laughed, claiming that no one could stop Igor's rage. But then he too became a target for saying the convent's name.
Valparus couldn't understand his deep-seated hatred, but it was clear his fists carried the weight of a profound sadness.
Realizing she couldn't dodge forever, she decided to counter. Fist met fist in a thunderous clash.
Igor staggered from the force of her blow, a shock that only fueled the inferno of his rage even further. The nun's dismissive words echoed in his mind, renewing the vow he made long ago to become impossibly strong. But his intense training regimen had a price. He began to lose his hair. It left a mark on him. But in exchange, he gained a powerful physique. Valparus drives a fist into her opponent's abdomen, but it feels like striking a stone wall, inflicting no damage. She then struck his face, realizing she'd found a weak spot. After knocking him out, she vowed to face him again when his fists were no longer driven by hesitation. However, the entire fortress began to tremble, and Valparus wondered if she might have overdone it in their fight. Back with our hero, he also felt the tremors, wondering if it was an earthquake.
Suddenly, the ceiling above him collapsed, but he swiftly summoned his magic sword, slicing through the falling stones before they could crush him.
But the immense impact tore through the castle, bringing the fortress to its knees. Rubble and ruin barred his way, but the main character roared, "I don't have time for this." Just then, Kubalt's voice echoed, confirming Valpurgis was alive, but trapped in a collapsing chamber. A shadow bat materialized to guide him, urging him to save his friend and escape the ruins. Meanwhile, Valpurgis held on to hope, certain that Valor would come for her. She had to find him. There were words she needed to say, words she'd left unspoken, lost in thought. A shadow fell over her as a massive stone plummeted from above. But in a flash of steel, the main character arrived, splitting the rock in two. Tears of relief streamed down Valpurgis's face. Even in this hellscape, seeing him again filled him with joy. But his eyes fell upon a defeated foe, and he asked who it was. Kubalt's bat shrieked with panic, warning them that there was no time for questions. The entire structure was giving way, forcing them to run. As Purgis marveled at how such a large warrior could vanish into a glove, the protagonist had silently stored Igor in his inventory, a silent promise to not abandon a comrade. While they fled, Paris, knowing Lord Valor's noble heart, suddenly declared through the chaos that she had something vital to tell him. Han Ji-woo urged her to wait until they were safe, but the Countess insisted it couldn't wait. She revealed that Purgis was not her true name. Her name was Chartier. The protagonist called it a beautiful name. Just as the horrifying reality set in, they weren't going to make it. Chartier saw it too. Right before a wave of debris crashed down upon her, Hanju lunged to help, but he was swallowed by the collapsing ceiling as well. The bat cried out in despair, but the main character's voice cut through the dust. "I'm not dead yet." Miraculously, he and Walpurgis had survived the initial cave-in. Their eyes met through the haze. They were alive. At that moment, Hexax appeared, and the protagonist shouted that her timing was perfect. He leaped onto her back, using her wings to fly, reaching a hand out for Walpurgis. "The entire castle will be gone in 5 seconds, Hexax warned, as the main character desperately tried to pull Chartier from the rubble, but her hand was slipping from his grasp. Mummies. The fortress finally imploded, unleashing a colossal cloud of dust. Yet, against all odds, they burst free from the chaos just in time. And in that moment, by revealing her true self to the protagonist, a system window appeared. Her affection level had soared.